Chapter 1122. Ah, you're leaving already? Lu-er immediately forgot her fear, and her eyes revealed an expression of wanting him to stay. She said, "Grandfather promised to let you go into seclusion in Wood Killer Sea for a year. There's still a lot of time." Yu Qianqiu did not answer her question. He looked at her and said with a faint smile, "Lu-er, listen to your grandfather. Don't sneak out anymore. The outside world is really not suitable for you." Lu-er was stunned on the spot, not knowing what was going on. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand at her, who was in a daze, and said decisively, "Bring me to your grandfather. Let your grandfather send me out." Lu-er hesitated for a while, as though she didn't want Yu Qianqiu to leave so quickly. Yu Qianqiu immediately smiled and said, "If you don't bring me, I'll go by myself." After saying that, he flashed into the air and looked down. Not only was Lu-er in the forest below, there was also a small silver ball buried with the dried-up spirit stones. The dilly-dallying Lu-er immediately chased after him and asked, "Are you really not going to see me again in the future?" Yu Qianqiu didn't pay attention to her. Instead, he increased his speed and flew far away. Lu-er's early-stage minor immortal cultivation couldn't catch up to him, but she gritted her teeth and increased her speed. Luckily, the plain where the treehouse was located was not far away. Two streams of light, one in front and one behind, zigzagged down from the sky. They flew past the treetop in the plain, landing under the tree one after the other. The ancient tree had grown for who knew how many years. It gave off a simple and unadorned feeling. The hollow roots of the tree were in a tripod state. Three sides were ventilated. The old roots were strong and the thin roots were coiled. It could be seen that the space inside the trunk was not small. Yu Qianqiu stood outside and didn't go in. He said in a clear voice, "Senior Mu, please open the mystic door and let Junior leave Wood Killer Sea." As soon as he finished speaking, Mu Yuanzi appeared under the hollow tree with a walking stick. He looked down at Yu Qianqiu for a while and said indifferently, "You want to leave on your own. I didn't force you to leave. You better remember what you promised me. Just remember it." Yu Qianqiu cupped his fists. "I am a man of my word. Please open the profound gate." Without another word, Mu Yuanzi pointed his cane forward, and a wall of profound light immediately appeared in front of Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu was just about to enter when Lu-er suddenly shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, help me send my regards to elder sister Furong and the rest. Tell them that I miss them, and tell them not to forget Lu-er. Lu-er will accompany them to play mahjong when there's a chance." As she spoke, large drops of tears flowed down her cheeks. Mu Yuanzi glanced at her and closed his eyes. This time, he didn't reprimand her like he usually did. Yu Qianqiu only paused in his footsteps and listened to her words expressionlessly. In the end, he didn't even turn his head. He let Lu-er cry her heart out and walked forward with large steps. His figure disappeared along with the wall of profound light. The moment Yu Qianqiu stepped into the wall of profound light, the scenery in front of him suddenly changed. He saw the exposed red cliff and the ancient language tree with golden leaves. In the blink of an eye, he had returned to the place he left. Even though he had experienced this once before, it still felt like a dream. Looking back, the wall of profound light had already disappeared. "Where did you go?" Suddenly someone spoke. Yu Qianqiu jumped in fright. He raised his head and saw Deming Luan standing on the branch of the ancient language tree looking at him. He immediately let out a sigh of relief and said, "I didn't expect you to still be here. If I couldn't find you, how would I explain to Wei Chuanxiu and the rest?" Deming Luan flashed down from the tree and said with a frown, "If I didn't guess wrong, you should have gone to Wood Killer Sea." Yu Qianqiu nodded his head and looked around. Jin Tai and the rest still haven't moved? Did anything happen? They should still be searching everywhere. This is the last thing Jin Tai and the rest rely on to make a comeback. They won't let it go if they don't find it. Otherwise, they will definitely summon us. After Deming Luan finished, he asked, "What happened to Wood Killer Sea? How did you get involved all of a sudden?" "This isn't the place to talk about this. I'll slowly tell you when we get back." Yu Qianqiu looked around and saw that there was no one around. He casually took out the human skin mask and put it on his face. Previously, when he was roasting the fish, he was afraid that the smoke and fire would cause the mask to change color. making it inconvenient to use in the future, so he took it off. Now that the matter wasn't over, he still had to wear it and continue pretending to be awesome. Just as he finished dressing up, the two of them were startled at the same time. They quickly took out the communication jade talismans that Jintai had distributed to everyone. The two of them held the jade talismans for a while and looked at each other in dismay. They then crushed the jade talismans in unison. After doing this, Yu Qianqiu sneered. That madman Jintai really dared to do this. It's not surprising. He has always been an extreme person. To achieve his goals, he would do anything. De Mingluan frowned and said, Are we really going to do as he said? It turned out that the two of them had just received a message from Jintai. Jintai ordered them to immediately set fire to their respective locations in the ancient forest. Moreover, the requirement was to set the fire. Those who disobeyed would be killed without mercy. There was no room for discussion. If others heard this order, they would definitely be confused. Unfortunately, the two of them had heard Jintai and Bai Qi casually mention this matter, so they knew what kind of conspiracy it was. Who would listen to him? This guy only cares about himself. He doesn't care about the lives of his subordinates. Yu Qianqiu snorted disdainfully and pouted his lips. Don't you know what kind of place this is? If we really set a few fires here, once we alarm the grass with spirits in the ancient forest, we will incur the wrath of the masses. The taste of being beaten up by the masses will not be good. At that time, you and I will not be able to bear the consequences. The others don't know about the conspiracy and have no way out. They will most likely do as we say. De Mingluan let out a long sigh. Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu fell into silence. He thought of Tai Shu Xian and Qing Nyang, and didn't know what would happen to them. Thinking about it, he suddenly exclaimed, What do you mean by setting fire now? Could it be that Jintai and Bai Qi have already taken the risk to lure Wang Qing and the others here? Otherwise, there is no point in setting fire now. It's not impossible. The two of them saw that they couldn't find that person to help after such a long time, so they won't keep delaying. Otherwise, when Wang Qing and the others stabilize the forces in the Immortal and Netherworld, they will have spies everywhere in the Immortal and Netherworld. De Mingluan pondered for a moment, then said, At that time, no matter where they escape to, they will inevitably be discovered by Wang Qing and the others. How can they run around like now? I'm afraid that they won't even be able to find a foothold in the three realms. So, it is very likely that Jintai and Bai Qi have already taken the risk. They are just hiding it from everyone and treating everyone as chess pieces. Yu Qianqiu nodded in agreement. Suddenly, his gaze stopped in the distance. He was stunned and said, Someone has already started to do as Jintai said. De Mingluan looked back and saw a cloud of thick smoke rising in the distant sky. Not long after, the sound of a fierce battle came from that direction. Boom! The two of them were shocked by the loud sound behind them and turned around. In the distant sky, 6 snow-blue rainbow dragons shuttled between the heaven and earth. A golden flowing light with extraordinary aura, and a white flowing light were fighting with each other. That was not all. A black hurricane that was like a pillar that supported the heavens swept over to help. Countless towering trees were uprooted and swept up into the clouds. They really lured Wang Qing over. That black hurricane is. De Mingluan was shocked and said, Could it be that King Wu Feng of the Black Mountain has come? I'm afraid so. Looks like Jintai wants to catch both father and son in one fell swoop. So he took the risk to lure them all over. Yu Qianqiu snorted disdainfully and sneered. Suddenly, he saw many figures flying over in groups from the distant sky. It was obvious that they were not the subordinates of Jintai and Bai Qi, the two bandits. Countless figures flew into the sky from the forest in all directions. Their clothes were all strange, and the color was mostly green. It was obvious that they were the plant spirits of the ancient forest. For a moment, angry shouts and the sound of fierce fighting mixed together. All kinds of flowing lights exploded in the sky like fireworks. Let's take a look first. If it doesn't work, we'll return to the divine ruin realm and not play with them anymore. Go up. Yu Qianqiu shouted and took the lead to fly to the ancient language tree. De Mingluan immediately understood that it was a bit conspicuous to stand below. If they were not careful, they might be affected, So he also flashed up. The two of them hid in the dense golden leaves and watched the battle outside through the gaps. Seeing that the incomparably powerful hurricane had joined in, the two flowing lights, one gold and one white, immediately broke away from the battle with the 6 snow-blue rainbow dragons. They streaked across the sky at an unbelievable speed and escaped. Jin Tai Bai Qi, the two of you have lured us father and son all the way here. If you have any schemes, then use them. A loud voice came from the black hurricane and resounded through the world. It seemed to have seen through Jin Tai and Bai Qi's scheme. However, the two of them were different from the previous times. They no longer ran and stopped, but left without turning back. With the cultivation of everyone present, it would be very difficult to catch up to the two of them. Wu Feng and Wang Qing wanted to lead the large number of people gathered from the underworld and various sects to continue the chase, but they found that they were met with great resistance. Countless grass and wood monsters rushed over from all directions, doing their best to stop them from advancing any further. 6 snow-blue rainbow dragons immediately plunged into the densely packed grass elves and slaughtered them, as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The whirring black hurricane easily swallowed up the people that swarmed over. This was a completely unbalanced battle, but the countless plant monsters still rushed over without any regard for their lives to die. For a moment, there were endless screams. Wu Feng and Wang Qing's father immediately felt that something was wrong. They hadn't met any resistance along the way. Why did they meet so many people who didn't want their lives here? Could this be Jin Tai and Bai Qi's scheme? Strange. Why are there so many plant monsters helping Jin Tai and Bai Qi without any regard for their lives? De Mingluan, who was hiding on the ancient language tree, was suspicious. He then sighed with some emotion and said, "Rushing over is just throwing away their lives, why bother?" Yu Qianqiu also felt that it was strange. He looked around, and his gaze landed on the bronze tree trunk. After a moment of thought, he said with respect, "I understand. They are protecting the ancient language tree we are hiding in, and also the last barrier protecting their home." Chapter 11:23. The Great Bright Wool didn't understand what he meant for the time being. It just couldn't bear to see countless grass and wood demons courageously dying. It shook its head gently and said, "The ancient forest has always been isolated from the outside world. It has never had any conflicts with the people outside. It can be said that it stands aloof from the world, but in the end, it can't avoid being implicated by the people outside." Wang Qing, who was wearing a silver mask and a wide blue robe, looked around. He was a little shocked when he saw the grass monsters coming from all directions to die. He faintly felt that they were not necessarily working for Jin Tai and Bai Qi. In a flash, he waved his sleeves, and the 6 rainbow dragons no longer slaughtered wantonly. They quickly converged around his body to defend himself. His eyes flickered, and a voice came from under the silver mask. "We are chasing after Jin Tai and Bai Qi. We have no enmity with you, so why are you trying to stop us?" Before anyone could answer, a cold snort came from the black whirlwind. "A group of reckless evildoers, those who stop me will die." The range of the whirlwind rapidly expanded, and for a moment, it seemed to have the power to devour the world. The storm-like attacks of the elves were like clay oxen in the sea, and had no effect at all. The violent howling of the black hurricane was like the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves. It covered the sky and the earth, and the powerful suction it produced quickly spread out, uprooting countless towering ancient trees. The ancient language tree that stood alone on the edge of the cliff stubbornly resisted the strong suction, and its golden leaves all flew toward the whirlwind. The strange thing was that every leaf was extremely firm, and even though it shook violently, not a single leaf fell off. Under the suction of the strong wind, the ancient language tree's gentle whisper turned into a sharp mournful cry, as if it was telling its vicissitudes of life and suffering, as if it was begging for mercy. The burning sea of fire in the distance was rapidly expanding with the help of the wind. The elves had no time to put out the fire, and they all rushed to block the attack of the strong enemy. Seeing the sea of fire gradually expanding in the ancient forest, the mournful cries soared into the sky, and they didn't know why this disaster suddenly befell them. The billowing smoke was sucked in by the whirlwind, blowing past the ancient language tree. The two people hiding in the canopy were almost smoked. Demingluan clenched his fist in front of his nose and said, "Let's go. If this goes on, I'm afraid that even the two of us will be implicated." Yu Qianqiu, who was hugging the tree branch tightly in the strong wind, chuckled and said, "There's no rush. There was no hurry. Wait a little longer. If I'm not wrong, there's going to be a good show soon. I guarantee that you'll be able to broaden your horizons. You can't miss this opportunity, hee. Is there a good show to watch?" Demingluan looked left and right. Seeing the strong hurricane approaching, he suddenly frowned and his eyes lit up. "You mean the one from Wood Killing Sea?" In Wood Monster Sea, under the hollow tree, Luer sat on a tree root. She hugged her legs and rested her chin on her hands, not saying a word. The tears on her pretty face had yet to dry. Mu Yuanzi, who was leaning on his staff, looked down at her from above. This time he didn't blame her. He thought that a child's heart was broken, and that a little sadness would pass. Suddenly, a shrill wail came from a distant mountain. The grandfather and granddaughter pair looked back at the same time, and Mu Yuanzi's expression changed abruptly. He teleported high into the sky, and his eyes shone with a green splendor to see into the distance. He saw the branches and leaves of the ancient language tree on the distant mountain, as if it would be uprooted by a gust of wind at any time. Humph! Mu Yuanzi's angry snort resounded in the air. He pointed his finger at the void, and the profound wave light wall appeared. Fierce winds swept in, and thick black smoke surged in. Mu Yuanzi smelled the sparks in the black smoke, and he immediately became furious. He stepped into the profound wave light wall and disappeared. The murderous hurricane was getting closer and closer, and Yu Qianqiu, who was hugging the tree branch tightly, felt a little overwhelmed. He was annoyed that he was going to miss a good show. Just as he was about to leave with Demingluan, he heard an angry shout from the sky. "Who dares to behave atrociously in my ancient forest?" Facing Demingluan's questioning gaze, Yu Qianqiu's eyes brightened, and he nodded repeatedly, thinking that it was finally here. What arrogance! The immortal netherworld and immortal netherworld are the world of us father and son, and even the ancient forest has to submit. A cold sneer came from the black hurricane, and he seemed to realize that the newcomer's cultivation was profound. His tone changed and he asked, "Who are you?" The wood spirits that had been rushing over from all directions saw Mu Yuanzi's figure suddenly appear in the sky, and their grief and indignation turned into joy. They quickly retreated, no longer making unnecessary sacrifices. At this time, whether it was in the sky or on the ground, all the wood spirits knelt and kowtowed to Mu Yuanzi. Mu Yuanzi waved his hand at the crowd with a grave expression, and said, "All of you, go put out the fire." The hidden meaning behind his words was, "Leave this place to me." All the wood spirits immediately obeyed, and rushed to the blazing sea of fire to put out the fire. Wang Qing, who was protected by 6 rainbow dragons, looked at the old man with the walking stick in the sky, and his gaze gradually became serious. The moment he came out, he saw the black hurricane kill countless people. Mu Yuanzi, who did not like to kill, was also angry. Without saying anything, the wooden staff in his hand turned into a stream of light and shot up into the sky. In the blink of an eye, a huge wave was set off in the sky, and a pillar that supported the heavens directly smashed towards the center of the black hurricane like a meteor. Jin Tai and Bai Qi, who were hiding in the distance, suddenly saw a terrifyingly huge wooden staff appear in the sky. Bai Qi's pupils suddenly shrank, while Jin Tai laughed loudly and clapped his hands, saying, "Wonderful, wonderful! We finally summoned old Mu. Bai Qi, let's go help old Mu." The two of them immediately turned into streams of light, and quickly returned. With a loud bang, the heaven and earth shook. The huge wooden staff pierced into the black hurricane, and directly scattered the fierce hurricane. With one move, it broke the fierce hurricane that no one could block. Wu Feng, who was hiding inside, vomited a mouthful of blood on the spot, and was sent flying 1,000 meters away. After breaking through the hurricane, the huge staff stabbed into the ground with a boom, and the ground immediately split into pieces, creating deep ravines. The brown wooden staff that stood between the heaven and earth was simple and unadorned, but it was majestic and awe-inspiring. Mu Yuanzi was standing on the head of the high staff, looking down disdainfully. Wang Qing, whose blue robes fluttered in the wind, was shocked. His long hair fluttered in the wind, and he raised his head to look at the person standing on the head of the staff. He did not expect the other party to break the wind god's staff with one move and heavily injure his father. He immediately activated the sword art, and with a flick of his sleeve, the 6 rainbow dragons immediately roared and attacked. Mu Yuanzi, who was about to be besieged by the 6 dragons, stood there indifferently. Azure light suddenly erupted from the head of the staff beneath his feet. 6 thick, ancient vines shot out from the head of the staff in the blink of an eye, wrapping themselves around the necks of the 6 rainbow dragons with lightning speed. No matter how much the 6 dragons struggled, they were unable to break free. It was a spectacular scene of dragons being tied up in the sky. Without the interference of the hurricane, De Ming Luan and Yu Qianqiu, who were hiding in the canopy of the ancient language tree, saw the battle clearly. The two of them looked at each other, unable to conceal the shock in their eyes. Although the two of them knew that Mu Yuanzi was definitely very powerful, they did not expect that he would be able to suppress Wang Qing and Wu Feng with just one move. Yu Qianqiu had originally wanted to ask Bai Changchun to help him deal with Mu Yuanzi so that he could devour him. But after seeing this scene, he immediately dispelled that thought. Without a doubt, the current Bai Changchun was clearly not Mu Yuanzi's match. Seeing that his 6-dragon snow blue sword was trapped, Wang Qing flung his blue robes and sword into the sky, floating at the same level as Mu Yuanzi. He said solemnly, "I did not expect such a powerful expert to be hidden in the ancient forest. Who exactly are you?" Mu Yuanzi snorted coldly and said, "Ignorant juniors." Even the number 1 expert of the 3 realms, the demon god, had to be courteous when he saw this old man. No matter how arrogant the demon god was in the 3 realms, he would never come to my ancient forest to act so presumptuously. You guys sure are audacious. Do you really think that this old man has a good temper and will not start a massacre? Even the demon god had to be courteous? Wang Qing was shocked once more, and he sized up Mu Yuanzi with a bewildered gaze. Why have I never heard of such a formidable expert in the immortal dimension? In a blink of an eye, he slightly understood why Jin Tai's forces had never invaded the ancient forest after so many years of ruling over the immortal dimension. And he also understood why Jin Tai and Bai Qi had lured him and his father to the ancient forest. It turned out that such a formidable figure was hiding here. So it's a hidden expert. Wang Qing cupped his hands and bowed. This junior is the sect master of Heartless Palace, Wang Qing. I didn't mean to offend senior, but I was actually tricked here by Jin Tai and Bai Qi. I hope senior can be magnanimous. You're that Wang Qing who overthrew Jin Tai Immortal Palace. Mu Yuanzi interrupted him, and he recalled what Yu Qianqiu had said to him earlier. He immediately snorted coldly and said, "Good. You really made things difficult for this old man. It's not difficult for me to be magnanimous. And this old man isn't someone who likes to kill. But you dared to act violently in my ancient forest. If I don't punish you, won't my ancient forest be trampled by others in the future?" As he spoke, he glanced at the 6 bound rainbow dragons and realized that they were not ordinary treasures. He resolutely shouted, "Leave behind your weapons as punishment and swear never to set foot in my ancient forest again. If you do that, I can let you go." Wang Qing's breath froze. He couldn't leave the 6-dragon snow blue sword behind, and he couldn't hand over his father's divine wind staff either. Otherwise, even if he and his father joined forces, they wouldn't be a match for either Jin Tai or Bai Qi. As long as he handed over the treasures he relied on, he wouldn't be far from death. Jin Tai and Bai Qi would definitely retaliate, and this was equivalent to handing over the lives of the father and son. So how could he agree? "Old man Mu, we can't let them go like this." Jin Tai's voice came from afar, and a golden and white light flashed over. Jin Tai, who was holding the golden cloud rod, and Bai Qi, who was controlling the obsidian light mirror, appeared at the same time. Together with Mu Yuanzi, they trapped Wang Qing in the center. Bai Qi was solemnly examining Mu Yuanzi, but Jin Tai looked at Wang Qing and laughed wildly. "Wang Qing, you probably didn't even dream that this day would come. Today, I'm going to make you and your father spit out everything you've eaten, including interest. Chapter 11:24. The smoke in the air gradually dissipated. Although the fire had been very big, it was a piece of cake for the wood spirits to extinguish it without any restraints. In just a short while, not even a spark could be found. The various factions that had gathered from the immortal and netherworld realms had not expected such an instant reversal of the situation. All of them were alarmed. Other than the trusted subordinates of Wu Feng and Wang Qing, the other factions had already started to retreat, quietly withdrawing. While Jin Tai was howling with laughter, Bai Qi's heart skipped a beat. He saw Mu Yuanzi, this peerless expert, glare at Jin Tai with a frighteningly cold light. It seemed to be even more hateful than when he looked at Wang Qing. Jin Tai, you are nothing but a despicable and shameless villain. Sooner or later, I will destroy your body and soul, and you will never be able to reincarnate. Wang Qing stared at Kinta, who was laughing maniacally, and spoke in a cold tone. Even now, it seemed that he had no intention of admitting defeat. Jin Tai revealed a vicious light and smiled proudly. No need for sooner or later. I will destroy your soul, and you will never be able to reincarnate. He was just too happy. He had not thought that he would really be able to turn the situation around with just one sentence. Wang Qing ignored him and looked at Mu Yuanzi. Senior wants to keep Junior's treasure, which is the same as keeping Junior's life. Forgive me, Junior cannot comply. Jin Tai laughed sinisterly. I'm afraid it's not up to you. The golden cloud rod in his hand was already moving. My sword intent is unparalleled and indestructible. It won't be so easy to keep my treasure. Wang Qing's eyes shone with a cold light that seemed to be solid. There was a hissing sound in the air. The sleeves of his blue robes bulged, and he suddenly clapped his hands together. There was an angry shout that sounded like metal clashing. Break! In an instant, the air was filled with a desolate sword intent. The 6 rainbow dragons that were bound suddenly erupted with brilliance, and they let out heaven-shaking roars. In an instant, 6 loud bangs rang out, and the 6 thick vines that bound them collapsed into pieces in the blink of an eye. It was a god artifact. Mu Yuanzi's eyes flashed. He hadn't expected Wang Qing to be able to break free from his bindings. As soon as the 6 rainbow dragons broke free, they immediately retracted their azure light and turned into 6 streams of light. They gathered in front of Wang Qing with almost instantaneous speed. The 6 swords merged into one, and the huge 6-dragon snow blue sword returned to its original appearance. The sword intent had been condensed at this moment since a long time ago. Almost at the same time, Wang Qing attacked like a bolt of lightning, brazenly drawing his sword. A sonorous sword cry resounded throughout the heavens and the earth, shocking the minds of everyone. A dazzling snow blue light swept out like a resplendent meteor. The 6th move of sword draw style. Jin Tai and Bai Qi were taken aback. It was the 6th move of the sword drawing style. Both of them had already experienced the terror of this move, so they naturally knew how powerful it was. Kinte thought that Mu Yuanzi would make a move, but what made him speechless was that Mu Yuanzi simply stood there and watched the show. By the time he reacted, it was already too late. As soon as he used teleportation, the sweeping blue radiance caused him to let out a blood-curdling scream, and his entire body exploded into golden powder. The golden powder flew away like drifting clouds, and Kinti's angry voice came from afar. Old man Mu, you did this on purpose. Bai Qi was luckier. He had already raised his vigilance when he noticed that Mu Yuanzi was looking at Kinte strangely. He didn't place any hope on Mu Yuanzi. In addition, his speed of escape was one of the rarest in the world, so he had already escaped by teleportation the moment Wang Qing drew his sword. The two who were hiding in the canopy of the ancient language tree and watching the show looked at each other. They didn't expect that Wang Qing could still fly into a rage under such circumstances. He was indeed not simple. Wang Qing didn't chase after him. Instead, he held one of the 6 dragon bodies on the hilt of his sword with one hand and slowly turned around to look at Mu Yuanzi. He said indifferently, Senior, can't you show mercy? Mu Yuanzi said expressionlessly, the power of this move is indeed extraordinary. But do you think you are a match for me? He didn't know that the 6th move of the sword drawing style could not be used a second time in a short period of time. No. Junior knows his own limits. Junior's sword drawing style might be able to intimidate the two of them, but there is no chance against Senior. As soon as Wang Qing finished his words, Wu Feng, who had been shaken to the core 1,000 meters away, recovered. With a pool of blood on his chest, he flew up to the sky angrily and shouted, "Old bastard! Let's see if your wooden staff is stronger, or my wind god staff is stronger." "Father, stop!" Wang Qing shouted loudly. However, Wu Feng didn't care at all. The staff in his hand instantly erupted with light that soared into the sky. It let out clanging sounds as it rapidly spun into the sky and grew larger and larger. In the blink of an eye, a shining staff flew into the sky and smashed towards Mu Yuanzi, who was standing in the sky. A trace of surprise flashed in Mu Yuanzi's eyes. He felt the unparalleled power of his opponent's staff. He didn't expect his opponent's staff to be so powerful. His figure quickly soared into the sky, and the wooden staff below him was pulled out from the ground. With a rumble, it shot towards the incoming staff. With a bang, the heavens and earth shook, and the air currents shot out in all directions like blades. Mu Yuanzi's wooden staff couldn't even withstand a single blow, and was instantly smashed into mud by the wind god staff. Wu Feng laughed proudly. Even Wang Qing felt slightly surprised. Could it be that the opponent was deliberately mystifying things? But in reality, he was just a weakling on the outside, and didn't have any true ability? However, just as Wu Feng opened his mouth to laugh, it was as if something was stuck in his throat, and he couldn't laugh anymore. The wooden staff that had been smashed into mud did not stiffen up. The brown mud gave people a feeling of hitting a snake with a stick. It quickly spread up, and countless branches and vines quickly wrapped around the divine wind staff. No matter how hard it struggled, it could not break free. Mu Yuanzi waved his hand and countless thick roots quickly grew out of the vines that wrapped around the wind god staff. They quickly pierced into the ground from the sky, and continued to grow underground. They firmly grabbed onto the struggling wind god staff, and quickly dragged it to the ground. Countless vines continued to grow out of the ground, and wrapped around the wind god staff layer by layer. In the end, it was wrapped into an enormous lump, and the original shape of the wind god staff could no longer be seen. Wu Feng turned pale with fright. This was his family treasure. How could he let someone else take it like this? He hurriedly sent out spells to control it. He seemed to have gone mad as he roared. "This is the wind god staff. Don't think you can trap it like this." The huge thing that was wrapped up in a lump was contracting violently, like a huge heart beating on the ground, causing the ground in a large area to tremble. The surrounding trees were all swaying along with the huge thing's contraction. It was obvious that the eeless scepter was trying to break free. The thick vines that bound it were breaking, but the vines on the ground were growing at an even faster speed, trapping the eeless scepter there. Mu Yuanzi glanced at Wang Qing. Seeing that he did not help and instead urged his father to stop, he immediately nodded slightly. He made up his mind and looked expressionlessly at the seemingly insane Wu Feng. He snorted coldly and said, "I didn't think I would see 2 god artifacts in one day. No wonder Jintai and the others were not a match for you and your father. Your wind god staff is even more powerful. It's a pity that with your ability, you can't even use 1% of its power. If you could use 10% of its power, I wouldn't be able to do anything to you and your father today. However, your cultivation is too low. This treasure is not something you can easily control. If I wanted to kill you, it would be as easy as raising my hand. Do you still not admit defeat? Hurry up and use your sword-drawing form to break it." Wu Feng shouted anxiously at Wang Qing. He completely ignored Mu Yuanzi's words. Wang Qing quickly flashed over and comforted him. Finally, Wu Feng calmed down. He understood that if Mu Yuanzi wanted to take his life now, it would be as easy as pie. Only then did Wu Feng bow unwillingly. Wu Feng admits defeat. "Senior, please be merciful." Wang Qing also turned around and clasped his hands. He roughly explained the grievances between them and Jintai. He made it clear that it was only right and proper for them to seek revenge against Jintai. At the same time, he made it clear that he did not intentionally come to ancient forest to cause trouble. He had been tricked by Jintai and by Qi. In the end he begged, Senior's abilities are difficult for us to match. However, if Senior keeps our treasures, it's no different from killing us. Jintai and Baichi will definitely not let this go. Please have mercy, Senior. I don't care if Jintai is in power in the immortal realm or you too. At least Jintai has always abided by the agreement. He restricted the people of the 3 realms to not offend ancient forest. Can you do that? Mu Yuanzi asked indifferently. Wang Qing was cold, but he was not an idiot. He could naturally hear the softness in Mu Yuanzi's words. He immediately guaranteed, Senior, don't worry. If we can really become in power, we will definitely not allow outsiders to disturb the peace of ancient forest. I don't doubt your guarantee. Mu Yuanzi stared at Wu Feng's face and said indifferently, but your father seems to be very unconvinced. I'm afraid that he will make a comeback in the future when he has the ability. Then isn't this old man nurturing a tiger that will only invite calamity? Wu Feng was shocked. He was indeed thinking of coming back to redeem himself after he could unleash the great power of the wind god staff in the future. However, now was not the time to be impulsive. He quickly suppressed the discontent on his face and bowed sincerely. Senior, don't worry. Junior will not dare to act rashly again. Who knew that his son would add something even more ruthless? Wang Qing solemnly promised. If my father does not abide by today's agreement in the future, Junior will sever our relationship as father and son. Unless he walks over Junior's dead body, Junior will definitely not allow father to disturb the peace of ancient forest again. But Junior also has a request of Senior. Mu Yuanzi didn't think that he would dare to make a request at this time. He paused and said, Speak. My father and I have a great enmity with Jintai and the others. I hope Senior's ancient forest will not become their refuge. Wang Qing once again cupped his hands and promised, as long as Senior agrees to this, Junior will definitely not disappoint Senior. Chapter 1125. From now on, there will be no place for Jintai and the others in the ancient forest. Mu Yuanzi looked at the green sea in the distance that had been scorched black by the fire. His right hand opened slightly in his sleeve, and the countless vines that trapped the divine wind staff quickly retracted and burrowed into the ground with a swoosh. As soon as the divine wind staff was freed, Wu Feng called it back into his hand with a flash of silver light. He looked at Mu Yuanzi in disbelief. He didn't expect that the other party didn't covet such a precious treasure. This made him calm down from his madness and start to reflect on his previous actions. I hope that you and your father will remember your promise. Mu Yuanzi waved his hand, indicating that they should leave the forest immediately. May I know your name, Senior? Wang Qing asked with a cupped fist salute. I have always been aloof from worldly affairs. There is no need to say my name. Mu Yuanzi waved his hand again, indicating that they should leave. Since the other party didn't want to say it, the father and son didn't dare to ask. They bowed together and quickly turned into flowing lights and left. The group of fearful subordinates finally heaved a sigh of relief. The capriciousness of the situation had indeed frightened them. They had originally wanted to take advantage of the situation to pursue an attack, but a terrifying expert had suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and in the blink of an eye, everyone was on the verge of death. Since they were lucky enough to escape, they naturally did not dare to stay any longer. They quickly followed the father and son and quickly left. From this day on, the news that there was a terrifying existence in the ancient forest quickly spread throughout the 3 realms. It was no longer a secret. The two hiding in the ancient language tree looked at each other. They didn't expect things to end like this. The most depressed was Yu Qianqiu. They had caused such a ruckus in the ancient forest, but this old man Mu had let them all go. He didn't even kill a single one. It was so disappointing. The two watching through the gaps in the leaves suddenly froze. They saw Mu Yuanzi look straight at them. The great bright will immediately said, "Not good. He's found us. Let's go quickly." Yu Qianqiu nodded in agreement. Just as the two of them were about to leave, they discovered that Mu Yuanzi had shifted his gaze away, as if he hadn't seen them at all. With Mu Yuanzi's cultivation, it was impossible that he hadn't noticed them since he had already noticed them. The two of them looked at each other in dismay, then turned around to look at Mu Yuanzi warily, not knowing what he was up to. Bang! A streak of light shot out from the ground, and the wooden staff returned to Mu Yuanzi's hand. Mu Yuanzi raised the staff high into the air, and a dazzling azure light erupted from the tip of the staff. It suddenly shot toward the ancient forest that was full of devastation. In the blink of an eye, a refreshing fragrance filled the air, and everyone who smelled it felt refreshed. Under the illumination of the green light, countless green sprouts began to emerge from the cracked ground, growing at a visible speed. Green grass, flowers, green vines, and trees were all uprooted from the ground. In just a moment, the forest in front of him seemed to have returned to its original state, without any traces of fighting. The wood spirits in the forest all walked out and kowtowed to Mu Yuanzi in the sky. "Old Mu, what is the meaning of this?" An angry shout rang out, startling everyone. A golden light and a white light flashed. Jin Tai and Bai Qi appeared together. Jin Tai angrily pointed at Mu Yuanzi and shouted, "Old Mu, we came to lend you a hand out of goodwill, but you left us in the lurch. Now you even let Wang Qing and his son leave. What are your intentions? Lend me a hand?" Mu Yuanzi coldly snorted, and the azure light at the tip of the staff suddenly retracted. He raised the staff and asked, "Who lured them here, causing the countless living beings in my ancient forest to suffer such a disaster? I didn't even find you to settle the debt, but you came to accuse me instead." "Nonsense." Jin Tai waved his sleeve, and without a change in expression he flatly denied. "It was clearly them who chased us, and we had nowhere else to run. Now it's us who lured them here. If you want to incriminate us, you can always find a pretext." "Who set my ancient forest on fire?" Mu Yuanzi suddenly shouted, and his cold eyes stared at Jin Tai. Was he discovered? Jin Tai was shocked, but on the surface he sneered and said, "Is there a need to say it? The fire was naturally set by Wang Qing and his son to make it easier for them to find us. The two of us didn't even have time to run for our lives, so you can't be suspecting that we set the fire, right?" Mu Yuanzi instantly started laughing from extreme rage. If he hadn't found out from Yu Qianqiu that this fellow was using someone else to kill him, then he would really have been deceived by Mu Yuanzi. However, his heart was like a clear mirror now, so how could he fall for this trick of his? "Jin Tai, do you really think you did it flawlessly? Do you think this old man has eyes but can't see? You dare to use a mere trick to kill someone with a borrowed knife in front of me? You must be tired of living." Mu Yuanzi shouted angrily, and a majestic killing intent covered the sky. Bai Qi cursed inwardly. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have come back with Jin Tai. Little did he know that Jin Tai was also panicking. It was obvious that the matter had been exposed, and if he really angered this old man, it would be impossible for him to escape. He immediately said in a deep voice, "Old man Mu, don't act recklessly. Since you insist on believing this, I have nothing to say. From now on, you and I will part ways and have nothing to do with each other. Farewell." He spoke righteously as if he had suffered a great grievance. He angrily cupped his hands at Mu Yuanzi and wanted to leave with Bai Qi. Mu Yuanzi snorted coldly and said, "Stop. You want to leave just like this?" The two of them turned pale with fright when they heard this. Jin Tai gnashed his teeth and said, "Old man Mu, don't go too far. Could it be that you want to attack me? If I don't punish you, then wouldn't all the creatures in my ancient forest have died in vain?" Mu Yuanzi's tone was indifferent, but the air around him had already begun to distort. He was about to attack. "Wait!" Jin Tai hurriedly raised his palm to stop him. He said anxiously and angrily, "Old man Mu, you ungrateful villain. Let's not talk about the fact that the creatures in your ancient forest were not killed by me. Even if they died because of me, so what? Let's not talk about the fact that we are both part of the 5 great spirits of heaven and earth. Do you still remember when you asked me to help you maintain the peace of the ancient forest? After I agreed, I have helped you maintain it until now. After so many years, have I ever asked you for the slightest benefit? Have I ever let you down in any way? If you still have the slightest bit of conscience, you should let me leave safely. It's not that you don't want to ask for benefits from me. It's just that you can't find me. Back then, when the Myriad Swords demon monarch was trying to kill you, you sent a large number of people here to find me. Do you think I don't know?" Mu Yuanzi sneered disdainfully and said with a cold expression, "This old man has never owed anyone a favor. Do you really think that you have never benefited from me? Do you really think that when you were in imminent danger, you coincidentally found the entrance to the realm of the divine ruins? Do you really think that in the realm of the divine ruins, you coincidentally found the phoenix plume? Do you really think that by burning the phoenix plume, you can obtain the spirit-transforming smoke by chance? Then your luck is too good. Why don't you think that if you didn't have the spirit-transforming smoke, would you be a match for the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch? If it wasn't for the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch being poisoned by the spirit-transforming smoke, I'm afraid you would have died somewhere long ago. Would you still be standing here and bargaining with this old man? Scenes of the past appeared in front of his eyes. Jean Tai had felt that the process of obtaining the spirit-transforming smoke was a little strange, but because he couldn't figure it out at the time, he could only treat it as his good luck. Now that he heard these words, he immediately understood the reason. He immediately said dumbfoundedly, "Back then, it was you who secretly guided me?" Bai Qi also had a face of shock. The two people hiding in the ancient language tree were shocked when they heard this. They didn't think that there was such a big secret behind the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch's death. De Mingluan glanced at Yu Qianqiu. They probably had to thank this guy for hearing this secret. Yu Qianqiu sighed endlessly. It seemed that the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch had died because of the spirit-transforming smoke, and it seemed that the person who changed the fate of the three realms was this old fellow who hid his strength. He wondered how the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch would feel after his death. Mu Yuanzi said indifferently, "Do you still think that I owe you?" Of course. Of course you still owe me." Jean Tai could be said to be throwing caution to the wind in order to survive. He argued irrationally. "Back then, even if you secretly guided me to obtain the spirit-transforming smoke, that was only to return the favor you owed me. What about the many years of favors after that? As long as you let us leave safely today, from now on, our grudges will be written off, and no one will owe the other anything. How about that?" Only a shameless person could speak such shameless words. If you didn't even have your life all those years ago, then how could you have everything you have today? Fine. I won't make a fuss about it with a shameless person like you, and I'll let you go today. However, Mu Yuanzi's gaze suddenly stared at Bai Qi, and he said, "I can let you go, but he has to receive punishment." Bai Qi was shocked. "Senior, what does this have to do with me? You're one of the main culprits, so how could you have nothing to do with this matter?" Mu Yuanzi shouted fiercely, and the imposing aura emanating from his entire body seemed to condense into a material form. Rumble! The air rumbled as it smashed over with the force to collapse mountains. At this point, Jean Tai couldn't care less about whether Bai Qi was an accomplice or not. He was afraid of being implicated, so he flashed to the side. On the other hand, Bai Qi had been on guard against Mu Yuanzi since a long time ago. When he saw that Mu Yuanzi had suddenly turned hostile, Bai Qi flipped his palm within his sleeve, and the obsidian netherlight mirror erupted with peerless black light. Clang! Clang! It instantly dispersed the imposing aura that was smashing towards him. Using this opportunity, Bai Qi teleported and disappeared, hurriedly escaping. "Where do you think you're going?" Mu Yuanzi shouted fiercely, and his cold gaze swept through the air. The wooden staff in his hand slashed through the air, and like a meteor chasing after the moon, it directly struck the teleporting Bai Qi out of thin air. Bai Qi violently spat out a mouthful of blood, and his entire body slammed into the ground. This scene caused Jean Tai's heart to palpitate. He didn't expect that even with Bai Qi's cultivation, Old Man Mu would be able to injure him in a single move. However, before Bai Qi could even land on the ground, the wooden staff shot towards him like a soul-chasing arrow. With Bai Qi's speed, he actually couldn't shake it off, and he could only desperately try to preserve his life. He flipped over and swung his fists, and countless layers of fist shadows overlapped like raging waves to obstruct the incoming wooden staff. The wooden staff suddenly erupted with a dazzling azure brilliance, and it effortlessly broke through the countless fist shadows and went straight for Bai Qi. Bai Qi was scared out of his wits, and before he could dodge, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. The wooden staff had already pierced through his chest, and he was directly nailed to the ground. Chapter 1126. A beam of green light pierced through the white shadow and smashed into the ground. Grass and dust flew everywhere as a large pit appeared. Bai Qi, who was covered in blood, lay in the center of the pit. Looking at the shining green wooden staff stuck in his chest, his face was filled with despair and unwillingness. Although he couldn't move because of the wooden staff, he still held onto his obsidian underworld light mirror tightly. This was the symbol of his rule over the underworld, and he couldn't lose it even if he died. The two people hiding in the ancient language tree saw that Bai Qi was seriously injured, but because of the terrain, they couldn't see the situation in the pit and didn't know how Bai Qi was doing. Yu Qianqiu turned around and transmitted his voice to the great bright wheel with a sigh. I didn't expect that Bai Qi would be the unluckiest one. This old man Mu is really something. He let both sides go, but he didn't let Bai Qi off. What they didn't know was that although Mu Yuanzi didn't like killing, he controlled the entire ancient forest. If he didn't do something to appease the spirits of the creatures in the forest, how could he calm the hearts of the creatures in the forest? Thus, after picking and choosing, Bai Qi, who seemed to be the least deserving of punishment, was the one who suffered the most. Jin Tai looked at Bai Qi, who was lying in the pit, and then at Mu Yuanzi, his heart pounding. Mu Yuanzi stretched out his hand and pulled out the wooden staff, which flew back into his hand with a whoosh. He looked at Jin Tai coldly and said, "Get out of here. If I see you two step into the ancient forest again, don't even think about leaving alive." Yu Qianqiu and the great bright wheel looked at each other. From what he said, it seemed that Bai Qi was still alive. The grass elves in the forest watching this scene immediately let out a cheer of victory. Their previous grief and indignation were swept away. Even the emperor of the underworld had been casually taken care of by the seniors of the Holy Land. They felt a sense of glory. In fact, this was probably the reason why Mu Yuanzi chose Bai Qi. Bullying a small fry like Yu Qianqiu had no effect at all. In the deep pit, Bai Qi stood up unsteadily. His face was pale, and his white clothes were stained with mud and blood. As soon as he put away the obsidian nether light mirror, Kim Tai flashed down and reached out to support him. "Are you all right?" He wasn't pretending to be concerned. After all, if Bai Qi were to die, he would lose a powerful ally, and he would be in even more danger. However, Bai Qi did not appreciate his kindness. He pushed him away shakily and said, "Get lost." This was because he hated Jin Tai for only caring about his own life, and not caring about his own. Although Bai Qi already knew what kind of person Jin Tai was, he still couldn't help but feel very angry. In fact, no matter who it was, they would be angry if they had such a partner. Jin Tai looked at Bai Qi's swaying appearance. It was obvious that he was heavily injured. Jin Tai couldn't help but smile bitterly and said, "Why are you doing this? You also know that I have no other choice. Even if you blame me, it's useless." Jin Tai forcefully grabbed Bai Qi's arm and flew out. The two of them exchanged glances with Mu Yuanzi, and were about to leave when they heard Mu Yuanzi shout, "Wait!" Jin Tai was immediately frightened, and turned around while supporting Bai Qi. He gritted his teeth and said, "Old man Mu, are you going to go back on your words?" Mu Yuanzi couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. He looked at the ancient language tree and said in a deep voice, "Haven't you two seen enough? Do you want me to personally invite you out? Or do you want to stay in my ancient forest forever?" Jin Tai looked over and found that there were indeed two people hiding in the crown of the tree. Yu Qianqiu and De Mingluan looked at each other and secretly transmitted their voices. They both felt that Jin Tai wouldn't sit still and wait for death. They wanted to see if Jin Tai had any other tricks up his sleeves. Thus, they rushed out of the ancient language tree and flew toward Jin Tai and Bai Qi. "It's the two of you." Jin Tai was startled. He didn't expect these two to still be alive. De Mingluan hurriedly bowed. Yu Qianqiu and Bai Qi's eyes met. He coughed and pretended to be concerned as he helped Jin Tai over. "Take your lackeys with you," Mu Yuanzi warned indifferently. The lackeys he was referring to were naturally Yu Qianqiu and De Mingluan. Under Jin Tai's instructions, De Mingluan summoned a flying shuttle. Yu Qianqiu helped the heavily injured Bai Qi onto it and laid him down. Finally, De Mingluan drove the flying shuttle and quickly flew them away. High up in the sky, the few of them remained silent. Half a day later, Bai Qi, who was sitting cross-legged and recovering from his injuries, finally regained some of his energy. The first thing he said when he opened his eyes was to ask Yu Qianqiu, "Where is the Saintess?" Yu Qianqiu shook his head and said, "I don't know. We were separated not long after we arrived in the ancient forest. I don't know where the others are either." He suddenly remembered that everyone had received Jin Tai's instructions to set fire to the ancient forest. They were probably surrounded and killed by the plant spirits in the forest. He then continued, "After the two of us set fire to the ancient forest, we were surrounded and attacked by many experts in the forest. We were lucky to escape. I'm afraid they didn't have a good ending. I don't know if they managed to escape or not." The Saintess didn't receive the news of the arson. Bai Qi saw Yu Qianqiu's puzzled face and didn't hide it from him. He bluntly said, "The news of the arson was only passed to you. For the Saintess's safety, the news wasn't passed to her. So, she shouldn't have set the fire and gotten herself into danger. Oh, then she should be fine, right?" Yu Qianqiu casually said, but in his heart he began to curse. "Damn it! Luckily I was smart and didn't do such a stupid thing. Don't worry. Doesn't that woman know how to calculate? She shouldn't be in danger." Jin Tai, who had been thinking with his hands behind his back, suddenly spoke. He turned to look at Bai Qi and said, "Black Wind and Wang Qing won't let us go. They might already be waiting for us outside the ancient forest to walk into their trap. You should quickly recover from your injuries. At that time, there might be another big battle. I won't be able to handle it alone. The ancient forest is vast. Even if they are waiting for us outside, it will be very difficult for them to meet us." Bai Qi shook his head and sighed. "My injuries are too serious. I won't be able to recover in a short period of time. I need to find a quiet place to recuperate." "Find a quiet place to recuperate? I'm afraid that will be difficult." Jin Tai looked around and said, "This ancient forest is a good place to recuperate, but we can't afford to offend Old Man Mu. Also, we don't know how Wang Qing and Black Wind's forces are developing. Whether we can avoid their eyes is another matter." Bai Qi slowly leaned against the end of the shuttle and said slowly, "Think of a way to return to the underworld. I can find a safe place to temporarily stay." As he said this, he was thinking about whether Silver Armor 1,000 soldiers and the others had safely reached the Great Snowy Mountain. "Looks like you still have a way out in the underworld." Jin Tai didn't care about the dignity of an emperor anymore. He sat cross-legged in front of Bai Qi and asked, "Is it where 1,000 soldiers and the others went? Can you tell me where it is, so I can have some confidence?" "Damn! Another secret." Yu Qianqiu's ears immediately perked up. However, Bai Qi was tight-lipped. He slowly closed his eyes. He wouldn't reveal anything until he reached that place. Seeing how guarded he was, Jin Tai immediately snorted in disdain and said, "You won't reveal a top-secret place. Looks like you are prepared to find a place to curl up for the rest of your life. But don't forget, even if that father and son turn the 3 realms upside down, they won't leave us two behind." "Humph." Bai Qi coldly snorted and suddenly opened his eyes. He raised his hand to touch the wound on his chest. His expression was ferocious, and he said word by word, "Originally, I had the thought of curling up in a corner if I couldn't do anything. I, Bai Qi, am not an unreasonable person, but I am not someone who doesn't take revenge. Old Mu bullied me too much. If I don't take revenge, I am not a man." Yu Qianqiu stood silently at the side. He thought to himself, those who can climb to such a high position are indeed not easy to bully. They are all vicious and merciless people. Let Old Mu's matter go. Jin Tai waved his hand and sighed. "It's not that I look down on you, Bai Qi, but at least for now, you have no hope of getting revenge on Old Mu. It's already good enough if you can get rid of that father and son. I can't kill Old Mu, but it doesn't mean that others can't." Bai Qi laid on the ground and slowly pressed the wound on his chest. His expression was ferocious as he said, "And that father and son, Sheng Jun and the others can't die in vain. Since things have come to this, don't think about getting away with it." Jin Tai's eyes lit up. "You mean you can find someone more powerful than Old Mu? If there is such an expert, why didn't you say so earlier? Then you wouldn't have to suffer such humiliation." He pointed at Bai Qi's chest. I don't know if he is more powerful than Old Mu, but I believe that Old Mu won't be able to do anything to him. As long as he has his eyes on him, even if Old Mu doesn't die, he will still lose a layer of skin. Bai Qi looked at him and sneered. You know this person, and this is your idea. In the past, I didn't have the heart to do this, but now that the old and new grudges are piled up together, I can't care so much anymore. I know him, and this is my idea. Jintai was startled. After a moment of silence, he suddenly said in shock, You mean Sanyi? The great bright wheel, who was steering the flying shuttle, was also listening to their conversation. When he heard this, his entire body trembled. He couldn't help but cry out involuntarily, Sanyi. He had already turned his head to look at the sickly Bai Qi with some fear. Yu Qianqiu was startled. He didn't know who this Sanyi they were talking about was to cause De Ming Luan to have such a big reaction. However, when he thought about how even Jin Tai had to call him Sanyi, he couldn't be simple. This was the first time he had heard of someone being called Sanyi in the celestial realm. He secretly transmitted to De Ming Luan, Who is this Sanyi ? De Ming Luan was so shocked that he forgot to reply. Bai Qi laughed coldly. That's right. He is Demon Monarch 3 Nights. Jin Tai, didn't you want me to communicate with Sanyi last time? I promise you, after I recover, I will immediately contact Sanyi. As long as Sanyi agrees to our conditions, we will immediately open the passage to the demon realm and release Demon Monarch 3 Nights, and let the demonic path reappear in the 3 realms. Chapter 1127. At this point, how could Yu Qianqiu still not understand who the so-called Third Master was? It was not Third Master at all. Even if he was a fool, he could guess that this Demon King 3 Nights was the supreme ruler of the devil world. Otherwise, these people would not have lost their composure like this. Bai Qi actually wanted to open the devil world and let the devil path reappear in the 3 realms. Yu Qianqiu was also shocked and looked at Bai Qi in bewilderment. He could understand Jintai's actions, but he did not expect Bai Qi to be so crazy. It was simply unimaginable. If he remembered correctly, the devil world should have been sealed by Bai Qi and Jintai together. The heroes of the devil world had been sealed by the 2 of them for so many years. It was imaginable how much they hated the 2 of them. But these 2 guys actually wanted to let the tiger out of the cage. Once that group of people who shook the 3 realms reappeared in the world, it would be strange if they did not take revenge. This was completely harming others without benefiting themselves. How could these 2 guys dare to do it? On second thought, he somewhat understood Bai Qi's craziness. A high and mighty emperor of the underworld for so many years, how awe-inspiring he was. After being forcefully taken away by others, it was already considered good that he could still maintain his rationality under such a situation. In the end, he was beaten up by Old Man Mu. Just think about it. Old Man Mu did not beat up the main culprit Jin Tai, nor did he beat up the father and son who had gathered to cause trouble, but instead beat him up for no reason. Wasn't this bullying? This was no different from beating a dog when it was down. Putting yourself in Old Man Mu's shoes, anyone would find it hard to accept, let alone Bai Qi, who was once the emperor of the underworld. For someone like Bai Qi, the principle of if you succeed, you become king should be clearer than anyone else. Coupled with the fact that he often dressed like a scholar, it was obvious that he was a person who thought highly of himself. This kind of person was not afraid of suffering losses, and what he could not stand the most was being humiliated by others. Moreover, it was being humiliated in public, and he did not even have the strength to fight back. This had probably become a great humiliation in Bai Qi's heart, and he would not rest until he got his revenge. Haha, Kintai was startled at first, but then he burst into wild laughter. He stood up and said, You finally figured it out. You'd rather die in glory than live in dishonor. Instead of being exterminated, it's better to have a talk with Sanyi. As long as Sanyi agrees to our conditions, it's not like we won't have a foothold in the 3 realms. As long as we have a place to stay, we can be safe for the time being. Who dares to say that we won't have a chance to make a comeback in the future? As for the life and death of the people in the world, it has nothing to do with us. Hearing this, Bai Qi nodded and closed his eyes. I'd rather betray the world than let the world betray me. With a single sentence, he expressed the hatred in his heart. What a good. I would rather betray the world than the world betray me. I like it. Isn't it just going to the netherworld? Kintai clapped his hands and praised. He regained his ambitious spirit and strode to the front of the flying shuttle. He shouted at the great bright wheel, "Move aside!" Leaving aside the great bright wheel, he personally stood at the front and drove the flying shuttle. With his profound cultivation, the flying shuttle's speed immediately increased. The great bright wheel silently stood beside Yu Qianqiu and secretly transmitted his voice. What do we do? These two madmen want to open the demon realm. Once the demons return to the three realms, it will be a disaster for the three realms. Yu Qianqiu was silent for a while before replying. Disaster? It's not that bad, right? It's just a change of owners after a bloodbath. Even if Kintai and Bai Qi make a comeback, they will still massacre the entire world to vent their hatred. Whether it's Demon King 3 Knights or the two of them, it's impossible for them to kill everyone in the world. The most unlucky ones are the people from the large sections. In any case, there aren't many people who don't have blood on their hands. It doesn't matter if they all die. Let's wait and see. Bai Qi is actually able to contact the people from the sealed demon realm. I want to see how he does it. Let's wait and see. If it's disadvantageous to us, it won't be too late to think of a way to stop it. Right now, even if we want to stop it, we won't be able to. Worrying is pointless. The great bright wheel was silent. After thinking about it, it made sense. If they followed them quietly now, they could still find out some secrets and prepare for the future. Kintai piloted the flying shuttle very quickly. It didn't take long for them to reach the edge of the ancient forest. Just as they were about to fly out of the ancient forest, Kintai suddenly slowed down and flew at a lower altitude. He flew into the rolling mountains and maintained a high level of vigilance. He used the rolling mountains to avoid being discovered by others. He was mainly worried that Wang Qing and the others had set up an ambush outside. However, what he was afraid of happened. Just as the flying shuttle passed through a canyon, a figure suddenly appeared from a bend in front of them. The two of them collided head-on. Jin Tai harumphed coldly and made his move decisively. In a single move, the other party was caught in his palm. His 5 claws gripped the other party's head, ready to take his life at any moment. Afraid that there were other people ahead, the flying shuttle disappeared into the dense forest below. Kintai's reaction was quick as he surveyed the surroundings. Looking at the person in his hand, he noticed that it was a woman with good looks. Moreover, she looked familiar. A moment later, he remembered who she was. He sneered coldly. You're Wan Buosheng's precious granddaughter, right? Speak. How many people did Wan Gutong send to search for us? Where are they? Both Yu Qianqiu and the Great Bright Wheel were stunned. Both of them recognized Wan Ling. If this person wasn't Wan Buosheng's granddaughter, who else could it be? However, Yu Qianqiu was currently disguised as Niu Yud, so Wan Ling didn't recognize him. Bai Qi, who was lying on the ground, also opened his eyes, staring at Wan Ling. Both he and Kintai had noticed her during the Immortal Palace grand wedding ceremony. She was sitting right beside Wan Buosheng, who knew that Wan Ling, whose life was hanging by a thread, turned a blind eye to Jin Tai, as if she was not afraid of him at all, nor did she put him in her eyes. Instead, she stared blankly at Bai Qi, who was covered in blood and mud, biting her lips. You're injured? Bai Qi was taken aback by her question. Why did it sound like there was something between them? But then again, looking at her up close, this woman's face really did seem familiar. Yu Qianqiu, the Great Bright Wheel, and Kintai all looked at Bai Qi suspiciously. Kintai exclaimed in surprise. Bai Qi, you're familiar with her? Bai Qi was startled. He slowly stood up and walked to Wan Ling's side to take a closer look. The light from the shade of the trees swayed on Wan Ling's face, and Bai Qi seemed to see a sparkling water surface. A hazy scene flashed through his mind, but he couldn't remember where they had met. Did they really know each other? Bai Qi raised his hand and pushed away Kintai's 5 claws on Wan Ling's head. He stared at Wan Ling and frowned. Miss Wan, other than the day of Kintai's grand wedding, have we met somewhere else before? This sentence immediately made Wan Ling, who was biting her lip, burst into tears. She choked and sobbed. You still remember me? You still remember me? Do you know how long I've been looking for you? It's been more than 1,000 years. I've been looking for you with great difficulty. When you left, you didn't even tell me your name. What kind of play was he putting on? Yu Qianqiu and the Great Bright Will looked at each other in dismay. Qintai revealed an expression of understanding. He looked at Bai Qi and sneered. I was wondering what was going on, Bai Qi. So Wan Bosheng's granddaughter is your lover. If that's the case, don't you have to call Wan Bosheng grandpa? Haha. He finally couldn't help but burst into laughter. Bullshit. Bai Qi shouted angrily. He glared at Qintai, then looked at Wan Ling from head to toe. He frowned and said, Miss Wan, you can't talk nonsense. I can see that the space between your eyebrows is still intact. You can't blame this Bai for this, Miss Wan. Have you mistaken me for someone else? You've forgotten me. Wan Ling's shoulders trembled as she choked with sobs. 1,800 years ago, on an island in the Blue Domain Sea, I was bathing in a pond in a barren mountain valley. Don't tell me you really don't remember anything at all? 1,800 years ago in the Blue Sea, Qintai revealed an expression of sudden realization. He looked at Bai Qi and teased. Wasn't it when we agreed to explore the Blue Sea of Death together? Bai Qi, there is no one else who knows about this except for you and me. The time and place he said are all the same. You can't deny it even if you want to, haha. Now that he couldn't become an immortal emperor, he became much more optimistic. To put it bluntly, he was just finding joy in the midst of hardship to amuse himself. The Blue Sea of Death. Yu Qianqiu had heard of this place before. There was a very dangerous place in the ocean. It was said that it was a place to collect the precious material for blacksmithing, the Blue Sea Gold Essence. However, no one dared to go too deep. Most people tried their luck to find the Blue Sea Gold Essence in the outskirts. Hearing Wan Ling's words, the hazy scene in Bai Qi's mind finally became clear. It was the scene of him flirting with a naked girl in a pool. Sure enough, the girl's appearance matched the current Wan Ling. He couldn't help but ask, the girl bathing in the pool was you? It wasn't that his memory was bad. To Bai Qi, a mere Wan Ling was not worth mentioning. At that time, he was waiting for Qintai and was bored. He accidentally found a girl bathing naked in the mountains and wanted to tease her. After playing with her, he left and didn't care about Wan Ling at all. After a long time, it was not easy for him to remember. Qintai immediately snorted and said, You admitted it yourself. However, he looked at Wan Ling with some doubt. With his rich experience, it was not difficult for him to see that Wan Ling was still a virgin. He couldn't figure out what was going on. You finally remembered. After that day, I have been looking for you, but I couldn't find you. Wan Ling looked at Bai Qi with tears in her eyes and shook her head sadly. I never dreamed that you were the supreme ruler of the underworld. Emperor of the underworld, Bai Qi. With my identity, how could I enter the underworld royal palace? You made me look for you so hard. I told you at that time that you had to take responsibility for what you did to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't let you go. Chapter 1128. Yu Qianqiu and De Mingluan glanced at each other. Normally, Jin Tai and Bai Qi would not pay attention to the love affairs of a small character like Wan Ling. However, to the two of them, they had long heard of Wan Ling's name. This woman had a strange habit of stealing other people's men. She enjoyed playing with men. When did she become so sentimental? Suddenly, the two of them couldn't help but admire Wan Ling's courage. She actually dared to play with Bai Qi. At that time, who would play with who? However, after thinking about it, they felt that it was not a big deal. Right now, Bai Qi was like a fallen phoenix that was not even comparable to a chicken. It would be a waste not to play with him when he was in trouble. The two of them were prejudiced by Wan Ling's reputation and didn't know the story behind Wan Ling's words. However, after hearing this, Bai Qi felt a toothache. He looked at Wan Ling and bitterly smiled. Let bygones be bygones. Plus, it's not like I haven't done that to you yet. Plus, I am in a precarious situation right now. How can I be responsible for others? If Miss Wan promises not to reveal our whereabouts, I can let you go. Jin Tai, on the other hand, didn't say anything. His eyes darted back and forth between the two enemies. No one knew what he was planning. But I won't let you go. If you want to get rid of me, you have to kill me. Wanling stared at Bai Qi with teary eyes and gritted her teeth. Such an unforgettable gaze caused Bai Qi's heart to tremble. He understood that this girl was not joking. He was speechless and didn't know what to say. Jean Tai's voice rang in his ears. I have a very good hiding place right now. I don't need to take a long and dangerous journey to the underworld. Let me deal with this matter. Bai Qi paused for a moment. He guessed something and didn't say anything else. Jean Tai indifferently interrupted. Miss Wan, you should watch carefully. Bai Qi is heavily injured and is being pursued by powerful enemies. If you follow him, you might not even have a tomorrow. There is no need to lose your life for him. This is a matter between me and him. You don't need to say anything. Let him answer himself. Wanling didn't even look at him and directly blocked his words. She felt as though she was going all out. Who cares if you are an immortal emperor or Jean Tai? At this moment in her eyes, there was only Bai Qi. Everyone else was nothing but floating clouds. Bai Qi raised his hand and touched the wound on his chest. In his entire life, no one had ever pursued him with such vigor. Not to mention after he became the emperor of the underworld. Ordinary women would not have the courage to do so. He did not expect that after he had lost his power, there would be someone who would do so. This caused a different kind of feeling to rise in his heart. If it was any other time, Jean Tai would have killed him on the spot if he spoke to Jean Tai like this. However, at this moment, not only was Kim Tae not angry, but he was even more sure that Wanling really liked Bai Qi. He immediately said sternly, if you really like him, you should think for him, and not force him regardless of the situation. Wanling slowly turned her head and looked at him, waiting for him to continue. Jean Tai waved his hand and pointed at the wound on Bai Qi's chest. He coldly snorted and said, he is heavily injured now. If you really like him, you should think of a way to help him find a safe place to recuperate. Do you want to see a group of people who only have the right to kneel and worship at his feet humiliate him because he is injured and unable to fight back? Yu Qianqiu secretly laughed and transmitted his voice to Demingluan. If I am not wrong, we are going to Myriad Saint Mountain as guests. Demingluan secretly replied, why did I hear that this woman has an affair with you? You even held hands in front of everyone? Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes. Nonsense. She hasn't even broken down yet. How could she have an affair with me? He then added in his heart, there shouldn't be any heinous surgery going on right now. Wanling had hidden her feelings for Bai Qi, but she was also a smart woman. Hearing Jean Tai's words, a trace of clarity returned to her eyes. She knew that Jean Tai's next words were the main point, and she could roughly guess what was going on. However, seeing Bai Qi clutching his bloodied chest, she gritted her teeth and said, what do you want me to do? Miss Wan, it's not that I don't believe you, but there are some things I need to clarify first. Jean Tai's slender eyes opened and closed uncertainly. A cold light flashed in them as he asked, why are you here? Heartless Palace does not have enough manpower. When we were chasing after you, we sent out a message to all the sects, requesting for help. The situation is stronger than me, so I, Wan Gutong, was forced to agree perfunctorily and randomly sent out some people. However, my grandfather has ordered that we are not allowed to directly participate in the chase. Currently, the Heartless Palace has sent people from all the sects to guard the ancient forest, the place where you are most likely to escape. I, Wan Gutong, was sent to this area. As for why I'm here, it's because I heard that you were in the ancient forest. That's why I ignored my grandfather's warning and ran here. After that, I was in a hurry to find out your whereabouts, so I snuck in here on my own. I didn't expect to run into you here. Wanling said slowly as she looked at Bai Qi. Humph. Don't let this venerable one have the chance to make a comeback. Otherwise, all the sects that participated in this matter will be massacred, of course. Jean Tai suddenly felt like he had said something wrong, deliberately explaining to Wanling. Your Wan Gutong is an exception. As for whether or not that day would come, who knew? Wanling didn't care whether Jean Tai was telling the truth or not. She continued to look at Bai Qi. The ancient forest is vast. It's impossible to guard the entire outer perimeter, so it's not difficult to leave. Furthermore, this area is under my, Wan Gutong's guard. I know where the guards are. I can safely lead you away from the eyes. But where are we going after we leave? Using the word we, she tied herself to the few of them. Clearly, she was determined to follow Bai Qi. Yu Qianqiu looked at Wan Ling, shaking his head inwardly. This woman seems to be for real. Could it be that this was the so-called a grown woman can't be kept at home, siding with an outsider? Jin Tai narrowed his eyes as he looked at Wan Ling, speaking slowly. I'm sure your Wan Gutong's Myriad Saints Mountain has no problem hiding the few of us, right? Doesn't that mean I can be with him every day? Wan Ling's eyes lit up as she looked at Bai Qi, nodding her head profusely. The Heartless Palace needs our Wan Gutong's help, hoping that our Wan Gutong will support them in wiping out the immortal world's powers. They won't be able to guess that you guys are hiding in my Myriad Saints Mountain, and I have my own mountain. No one will be able to find you guys. Before she could finish her sentence, she looked at Jin Tai in shock. If Jin Tai's group was discovered hiding in the Myriad Saints Mountain, then how could the Heartless Palace let Wan Gutong go? Wouldn't it be a disaster for Wan Gutong? Wan Ling hesitated for a moment. Jin Tai heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. If Wan Ling had agreed too readily, he might have been suspicious of her, and that was within reason. He immediately pointed at Bai Qi and promised, Miss Wan, don't worry. Once he recovers from his injuries, we will leave the Myriad Saints Mountain immediately. In the meantime, we will not expose our identities and bring trouble to Wan Gutong. Women in love were usually muddle-headed. Not to mention Wan Ling couldn't wait to be with Bai Qi. How could she make a rational decision? In the end, her emotions won over her rationality, and she agreed nervously. Under Wan Ling's suggestion, the few of them quickly changed their attire. Wan Ling didn't need to change herself, because they still needed to use her identity to avoid trouble along the way. As for Yu Qianqiu, he didn't need to make any changes. No one could recognize his current appearance, but everyone else had changed their appearances. Even Kim Tae had finally given up on his high and mighty golden clothes. After the preparations were complete, the flying shuttle silently swept out of the dense forest. This time, they switched back to the bright wheel to drive the flying shuttle. Under Wan Ling's guidance, the few of them rushed out of the ancient forest without any surprises or danger. Far away from the ancient forest, Wan Ling sat beside Bai Qi, who was disguised as an old man. Jin Tai, who was dressed like a muscular man, also stared at Wan Ling. He was undoubtedly warning Wan Ling that if she dared to play any tricks, he would kill her immediately. Although the speed of the great bright wheel driving the flying shuttle was not considered slow, as they had to avoid the heavily guarded areas along the way, it took them more than half a month to finally see a majestic mountain range that towered into the clouds, Myriad Saints Mountain. Along the way, they also encountered many interrogations, but with Wan Ling carrying the identity of Wan Buosheng's granddaughter, no one was willing to provoke this tigress when the situation in the immortal world had suddenly changed. So they arrived at their destination safely. With Wan Ling present, the Myriad Saints Mountain's protective formation and tight defense were completely ineffective against them. The flying shuttle directly bypassed the majestic main peak and flew to the back mountain. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but take a few more glances at the magnificent palace on the majestic main peak. He guessed that it was the famous Myriad Saints Palace in the immortal world. On the top of a mountain shrouded in clouds and mist, Wan Ling used a technique to break the protective formation, and the flying shuttle flew through the clouds and landed in the manor at the top of the mountain. On the contrary, the sky outside was clear. The few people who came here for the first time couldn't help but look around. Clouds surged around the mountain peak, and wild cranes flew past leisurely. From time to time, they could see streams of light streaking across the sky. The manor was surrounded by layers of green pine trees, and the flowers in the garden swayed in the wind. It was beautiful and tranquil. It was like a place where immortal happiness could be enjoyed forever. It was like a woman's residence, but it was a little cold and quiet. There was not a single person in sight. A few white deer that were domesticated on the mountain were not afraid of strangers. They actually walked in and out of the manor's gate leisurely. When they saw Wan Ling had returned, they immediately ran over with their hooves and surrounded Wan Ling to show their affection. After landing, Wan Ling heaved a sigh of relief. She finally arrived safely without any surprises. She dispersed the white deer that surrounded her and said to the few people, "All right, there's no one else here, and no one will barge in without my permission. You guys can show your original appearance and walk around the manor without worry. But just in case, try not to show your face, in case of any accidents." Her words were not a lie. In the entire Myriad Saints Mountain, even her grandfather Wan Bushing didn't dare to barge in. Otherwise it would incur her wrath. She could throw a tantrum outside, but in here, no one knew that she was often depressed or even washed her face with tears. This was her privacy, and she didn't want anyone to see it. Over time, the entire Myriad Saints Mountain knew that no one could barge in here, causing many people to curse her for being crazy. But now, it had become the perfect hiding place for the few of them. Chapter 1129. The manor at the top of the mountain faced the north. Although it was not big, there were still plenty of rooms for a few people to live in. As the saying goes, the guest follows the host. The four of them were arranged in the left and right courtyards. Jin Tai and Bai Qi were in the left courtyard. Yu Qianqiu and De Mingluan were in the right courtyard. The remaining backyard was Wan Ling's sleeping quarters. Wan Ling originally wanted to arrange Bai Qi in her backyard, but Jin Tai was determined to follow Bai Qi. He would live wherever Bai Qi lived. The backyard was her own room. It was fine for the man she liked to live there, but she couldn't accept Jin Tai living there. Bai Qi, who felt that he was living off a woman, was embarrassed to be with her all the time. He kept rejecting her politely. As a result, it was not convenient for Wan Ling to abuse her power. She could only arrange for the two of them to live in the left courtyard. Although the room could separate people, it could not separate people's hearts. It was unavoidable for Wan Ling to go to Bai Qi's room at least 3 times a day. She didn't know if Bai Qi could recover in peace here. Regarding this, Jin Tai often teased Bai Qi, who looked like a scholar, until he flew into a rage out of humiliation. Time in the mountains was like a flash of light, and the world was prosperous for 1,000 years. In the blink of an eye, more than a month had passed. During this time, Wan Ling still frequently went in and out of Bai Qi's room to show her concern. Bai Qi, who was somewhat unable to endure her enthusiasm, would meditate and not wake up. Wan Ling, on the other hand, looked as if she was happy to sit by his side for a while. She was as gentle as water, causing Bai Qi, who had his eyes closed, to have goosebumps. Although he knew that there shouldn't be any danger here, Jin Tai was still very careful. He rarely went out of the left courtyard. He would only call out to Wan Ling every day after she came to visit Bai Qi to ask about the situation in the outside world. After knowing about the ancient forest, the sects in the immortal world almost didn't resist at all. They recognized the Heartless Palace's position as the overlord of the immortal world. Jin Tai was so angry that he shouted and scolded the sects as traitors. He would definitely massacre them in the future. However, he didn't think about whether there was a need for the sects to be loyal to him. He had already fallen in the immortal world, yet he still wanted the support of others. It was no different from a fool's dream. Every day, De Mingluan maintained a respectful attitude and went to the left courtyard to pay his respects to Jin Tai. Almost every time, he would first listen to Jin Tai's vow about how he would take revenge. Afterwards, he would express great praise for his loyal subordinate and promise that if he conquered the world in the future, he would make De Mingluan a person who was above tens of thousands of people. Although the Great Bright will only listen to this, it still revealed an ecstatic expression and was deeply grateful. It even vowed that it would do its best to be loyal to them. In any case, no one was a fool, and they would say anything that was easy to listen to. Ming Mingling also received a new task. Of him, of the things the he, of Ming Ming king of great, Ming of Tai and Qi, and Ling of the Qi, the. Of course, Yu Qianqiu was dismissive. What does it have to do with me? At most, I'll just leave. On the surface, he seemed to be the most carefree person in the entire manor. Every day, he would wander around the outside of the manor. He would linger under the pine mist, admiring the green mountains and clouds of myriad Saint Mountain, and the people in the sky. When he was hiding in his room, he would let Deming Luan keep watch. He would sneak into the divine ruin realm to do his own things, or he would change his appearance and go to the illusory immortal city to gather information. When he was hiding in his room, he would let Deming Luan keep watch. He would sneak into the divine ruin realm to do his own things, or he would change his appearance and go to the illusory immortal city to gather information. In short, everyone had their own things to do. Wan Ling had to put in effort to deal with the matters in the sect. Not only did she avoid giving herself away, she also had to take care of Bai Qi. She also had to deal with Jin Tai's long-winded questions. Bai Qi practically hid in his room and did not step out of his room to recuperate and recover from his injuries. He could not bear Wan Ling's gentleness. Jin Tai was concerned about the situation outside the mountain. He constantly fantasized about how to counterattack. Other than not meeting with Yu Qianqiu, he was the one who negotiated with the others the most. Deming Luan was Jin Tai's spy. Other than helping Yu Qianqiu to keep watch, he would think about how to make up lies to deceive Jin Tai. He was very depressed. It seemed that ever since he met Yu Qianqiu, he had been helping him do this. Therefore, even though it was a good place to cultivate, everyone was looking for trouble. No one in the entire manor was at ease. 2 months later, Bai Qi's injuries had mostly healed. It would not take long for him to fully recover. Therefore, he would occasionally come out for a walk. One day, after Wan Ling left the manor, Bai Qi sneaked out of the manor to get some fresh air. He bumped into Yu Qianqiu. The two of them stood side by side under the canopy of a pine tree, bathing in the clouds. The cool wind blew on their faces. They talked about the safety of the underworld saintess. Not long after, Jin Tai followed Bai Qi to find him. As soon as he arrived, Yu Qianqiu immediately shut up. He only pricked up his ears to listen to their conversation. Jin Tai felt insecure like a stray dog, so the topic shifted to Wan Ling. He felt that it was not a good idea for Bai Qi and Wan Ling to continue like this. If Wan Ling ever felt that Bai Qi did not like her anymore, it would be troublesome if she became disheartened. She might even reveal the secret of their hiding place. He then said some things to persuade Bai Qi to sacrifice himself to sleep with Wan Ling. He said that women would be dead set on you after sleeping with you. Bai Qi immediately rebuked Jin Tai, as if saying that he would never do such a thing. However, a few days later, Yu Qianqiu did not know if Jin Tai had finally convinced Bai Qi. One day, Wan Ling entered the left courtyard. After paying attention, Yu Qianqiu found that she had been in there for almost an entire day. It was completely different from the past. The moonlight was clear and bright in the night. He found Wan Ling sneaking out of the left courtyard again. As a result, the moment Wan Ling walked out of the courtyard, she found Niu Yit sitting on the steps under the eaves of the opposite courtyard. The two of them looked at each other, and Wan Ling immediately blushed and walked away quickly. Sitting on the steps, Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but shake his head with a sigh. Looking at Wan Ling's unnatural walking posture and her blushing face, it was clear that Bai Qi had finally given her to the formation. It was likely that Bai Qi's fate would directly determine her fate in the future. He didn't know if Wan Ling entrusting her life to him was a blessing or a disaster. He hoped that she would get what she wanted. Perhaps it was because the secret was already out in the open. Wan Ling, who was still hiding tonight, openly lived with Bai Qi the next day. When he occasionally saw her, her bright and clean face had the appearance of a happy little woman. It was obvious that she had been nourished by a man. Yu Qianqiu was a bit gloomy. He originally wanted to see how Bai Qi contacted the Demon Realm's Demon King 3 nights. However, it seemed that Bai Qi's injuries would have to be delayed for some time. He had no way of stopping them from making love. He could only hope that Wan Ling would take pity on Bai Qi's body, and that Bai Qi would exercise some self-control. Wan Ling had already lost her virginity, and her mental state had also changed. Although she tried her best to pretend that nothing had happened, she couldn't hide it from the people in the Wan Gutong sect, who were very familiar with her. On this day, Yu Qianqiu was sitting at a small round stone table under an old tree, drinking a few cups with Deming Luan. After the two saw Wan Ling leave the mountain, they looked at each other and shook their heads with a bitter smile. Who knew that not long after, a ray of light would directly break through the mountain's defensive formation. An old man with white hair and a ruddy complexion landed in the middle of the courtyard, coldly staring at the two drinking people. Demingluan, it's actually you. The old man with white hair and a ruddy complexion exclaimed in surprise. His gaze then turned to Yu Qianqiu. Not only did he not know who he was, but he also realized that he couldn't see through the other party's cultivation. He was even more shocked. He didn't expect that there would be two people hiding in his granddaughter's residence. Yu Qianqiu looked at Demingluan inquiringly, but Demingluan had already stood up and cupped his fists, smiling. Sect Master Wan, it's been a long time since we last met. You've become even more energetic. Yu Qianqiu was also slightly surprised. So this person was Wan Gutong Sect's sect master Wan Bosheng. Wan Bosheng didn't reply to him, his gaze directly fixed on Yu Qianqiu. His face was so dark that it seemed like water could be squeezed out of it. In a low voice he said, "This friend looks very unfamiliar. Who was the one who ruined my granddaughter's purity?" Wan Bosheng was able to suppress his anger, but he couldn't help but get straight to the point. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't see through Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, he would have killed him right there and then. Yu Qianqiu and Demingluan exchanged a look. It seemed like Wan Bosheng had already found out something, but this question shouldn't be answered by the two of them. Wan Bosheng, congratulations. Just as the voice came from the left side of the courtyard, Jin Tai and Bai Qi both teleported to the courtyard entrance. Bai Qi's expression was a little unnatural. Wan Bosheng was shocked. He didn't expect there to be people here. Turning around, he was so shocked that he staggered back several steps, exclaiming, "Jin Tai, Bai Qi, why are you here?" In an instant his face paled, as if he could already see Wan Gutong's impending doom. Looking at Wan Ling's blissful expression, he was actually happy, thinking that Wan Ling was too embarrassed to make it public and wanted to hide it from him. He wanted to see which handsome young man was having an affair with his granddaughter, so that he could reveal the truth and allow his granddaughter to live openly. Otherwise, it wasn't a long-term solution to keep this matter a secret. Thus, he tricked his granddaughter to run a small errand, while he took the opportunity to come and see what was going on. In the end, he saw such a shocking scene. Now the two people that the Netherworld and Immortal Realms wanted to kill were actually hiding in his myriad Saint Mountain. Jin Tai laughed loudly hearing this, looking at Bai Qi mockingly. "The Emperor of Netherworld and your granddaughter have tied the knot. Of course I have to come and offer my congratulations. Am I not welcome here?" Even with Bai Qi's experience and knowledge, he was still embarrassed by this situation. On top of that, he met this guy who added oil to the fire. He could only grit his teeth and glare at Jin Tai before slowly cupping his fists. "How is Patriarch Wan?" "It's over. It's over. It's actually him." Wan Bosheng's face paled. His body swayed slightly as if he couldn't take this blow. Things were already clear. He knew that his granddaughter liked Bai Qi. Now that Bai Qi was here, and his granddaughter had lost her chastity, there was no need to ask who did this. Chapter 1130. Yu. Wan Bosheng was so angry that he couldn't even form a complete sentence. Bai Qi closed his eyes slightly. He didn't expect this old man to barge in so suddenly. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Jin Tai snorted coldly. "Wan Bosheng, the Emperor of the Underworld is interested in your granddaughter. Is he not worthy of your granddaughter? This is the good fortune your family accumulated in their previous lives." Wan Bosheng glared at the two of them with bloodshot eyes, gritting his teeth as he spat out word by word. "You've gone too far. Scram." "Scram?" Jin Tai's eyes narrowed. "Wan Bosheng, I think you're tired of living. Shut up." Bai Qi snapped at Jin Tai, stopping him from speaking any further. His face was dark and gloomy as he stared at Wan Bosheng. "Let's go, leave this place." Jin Tai was a little unhappy. How could a mere Wan Bosheng scare him? He sneered. "What's there to be afraid of? If he dares to go out and spout nonsense, not only will we not spare him, even Wang Qing and his son won't let him off." Wan Buoxing's body trembled with anger, ready to risk his life at any moment. Bai Qi turned around, staring at Jin Tai. I said, let's go leave this place. What? Don't tell me you've fallen in love with that lass? Jin Tai's face darkened as he pointed at the surroundings. This is Wan Gutong's headquarters. There are eyes everywhere. It's impossible to escape from everyone's eyes. I think Lord Wan will have a way. Bai Qi turned to look at the trembling Wan Buoxing. Lord Wan, things have come to this point, please calm down. I believe that Gate Lord Wan doesn't want the news of us hiding here to leak out. Otherwise, the Wangqing father and son wouldn't let your Wan Gutong and his descendants off. So, I hope Gate Lord Wan can think of a way to send us out of the Myriad Saints Mountain. And I promise that I won't leak the news of us staying here. The yard fell into silence. Only Wan Buoxing's angry breathing could be heard. Everyone's eyes were on him. After a long time, Wan Buoxing's breathing gradually calmed down. He stared at Bai Qi and gnashed his teeth. You better keep your word. Although Wan Ling was his most beloved granddaughter, to someone of his status, sometimes, he had to choose the lesser of two evils. After weighing the pros and cons, no matter how angry he was, he had to put aside his familial ties and think of the bigger picture. If he did not have this bit of decisiveness, he would not have been able to run everlasting paths to where it was today. Moreover, he had no other choice. Not to mention Jin Tai and Bai Qi joining hands. He was no match for any one of them. There was no way he could refuse, so he could only swallow his pride. He was filled with hatred now. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have come to investigate his granddaughter's privacy. He would have turned a blind eye to it. Why did he have to come here to humiliate himself? Of course. Bai Qi nodded. Jin Tai's expression was not happy. It was not a good feeling to be controlled by a mere Wan Buoxing. However, he knew that Wan Buoxing had made up his mind. It was useless to persuade him. In the end, Wan Buoxing threw out a few pieces of Wan Gutong's robes. The few of them quickly concealed their appearances before following behind Wan Buoxing as he broke through the protective formation. With Wan Buoxing personally leading the way, it was naturally not a problem for them to enter and exit the Myriad Saints Peak without being discovered. After exiting the Myriad Saints Peak, Wan Buoxing brought the few of them to a desolate valley 100 li away. He turned to look at the few of them with a dark expression. His gaze finally landed on Bai Qi, and he said in a low voice, Bai Qi, you should be aware of your current situation. Please be magnanimous, and don't have anything to do with Ling, in the future. You've already harmed her once, don't do it a second time. Otherwise we'll just go down together. Just as he was about to turn and leave, Bai Qi snapped, Wan Buoxing, don't make things difficult for Wan Ling. Tell her that one day, I'll come looking for her openly, and take her away. If she's harmed in the slightest, I'll flatten your Myriad Saints Peak, and wash your entire Wan Gutong sect in blood. Wan Buoxing's body trembled slightly, but he did not turn back. He turned into a streak of light, and flew straight back to the Myriad Saints Peak. However, the first thing he did when he returned was to reprimand Wan Ling in a fit of rage. Then, he sealed her cultivation, and forcefully suppressed the weeping Wan Ling at the bottom of the Myriad Saints Peak, forbidding her from coming into contact with anyone. This was the price Wan Ling had to pay. Watching Wan Buoxing leave, Bai Qi's mind was filled with the scene of him and Wan Ling tangling together on the bed. He listened to Wan Ling narrating her unwavering love for him for 1,000 years. Yu Qianqiu and Deming Luan, the two lackeys, looked at each other in disbelief. They did not expect Bai Qi to be such a passionate person, saying such resolute words for Wan Ling. She's already gone. What's there to see? Jin Tai broke the silence, looking at Bai Qi with disdain as he sneered. Who would have thought? You Bai Qi are actually serious this time. But then again, if one day you can really come to the Myriad Saints Peak and take that woman away, then I will be very happy. That means that you and I have already made a comeback. Speak. Where are you going now? Your injuries are almost healed. Do you still want to go to the netherworld to continue recuperating? No need. Bai Qi stared unblinkingly at the direction Wan Buoxing disappeared in and said word by word. I've made up my mind. It's time to contact the Three Knights Devil World. Everyone's expression changed, and a trace of joy flashed in Yu Qianqiu's eyes. The time he had been waiting for was finally here. Jean Tai, who was at the last moment, clenched his fists nervously, looking around and asking, "Now? Right here?" Without a word, Bai Qi tore off Wan Gutong's robe, revealing the white robe he usually wore. With a wave of his hand, countless streaks of light shot out, piercing into the soil and rocks in all directions. The last streak of light shot into his feet, and with a stomp, the earth trembled slightly. White mist rose into the air and disappeared without a trace. The sky was still the same sky, and the valley was still the same valley. If one looked down from the sky, they would find that the valley was already shrouded in white mist, making it impossible to see the situation in the valley. Everyone could see that Bai Qi had already laid down a formation. Just as they were looking around, Bai Qi flipped his sleeves and took out 2 items from his sleeves. In his left hand was his obsidian light mirror, and in his right hand was a crystal ball. Sealed inside the crystal ball were several pieces of cloth stained with blood. The blood was still bright red, as if it had just been stained with fresh blood. Obviously, it was preserved using some kind of secret technique. Yu Qianqiu and Deming Luan stared unblinkingly, not knowing what Bai Qi was trying to do. Jean Tai's expression also turned solemn. He tore off his Wan Gutong robe, and with a flash of golden light, a magnificent golden robe appeared on his body. The majesty of an immortal world emperor reappeared, but no one knew who he was putting on a show for. The obsidian light mirror slowly floated forward from Bai Qi's hand, growing bigger and bigger. In the blink of an eye, it became a mirror more than 10 meters in length and width, hovering in front of them. The mirror's surface was large and smooth, and the engravings around it were simple and elegant. The images of the 4 people present were clearly reflected in the mirror. The crystal ball was held in Bai Qi's palms, and its surface glowed with a gentle white light. Following that, a thin layer of red mist seeped out from the crystal ball, swirling around it, and the blood-red cloth sealed inside the crystal ball seemed to dim a little. As the gentle white light on the surface of the crystal ball disappeared, Bai Qi flipped his palm and put away the crystal ball. Then, he quickly pointed 2 fingers through the red mist in front of him, pointing at the obsidian light mirror floating in the air. The red mist that carried a trace of the smell of blood immediately throbbed and began to dance around Bai Qi's finger like a light smoke. "Go!" Bai Qi shouted, and the red mist at his fingertip condensed into a red light that shot towards the large mirror in front of him. With a pu sound, it turned back into red mist and dissipated on the surface of the mirror. Bai Qi's hands quickly formed complicated seals, and rays of white light continuously entered the center of the mirror. A fist-sized black spot gradually became clear in the center of the mirror, like a black hole. When everyone's gaze fell on the black hole, they felt as if they were trapped in it, and even Jean Tai was no exception. As soon as the black hole appeared, the red mist that spread out from the mirror immediately began to spin rapidly, swirling towards the center. The surface of the mirror was so smooth that not even the slightest crack could be seen, but the red mist was completely devoured by the black hole in the blink of an eye. The situation was extremely strange. Yu Qianqiu subconsciously became vigilant, and he secretly transmitted his voice to the great bright wheel, preparing to immediately escape if something unexpected happened. As soon as the red mist was devoured, Bai Qi flicked his finger and shot a white light at the fist-sized black spot in the center of the mirror. He said forcefully, "Peep into yin and yang, summon for 3 nights." As soon as these words came out, the surrounding air immediately throbbed and twisted, rushing towards the black hole in the center of the mirror. Immediately, it brought up a burst of sand and stones in the valley. After the surging air was sucked into the black hole suddenly shrank and disappeared in the center of the mirror. Then, a white light appeared in the center of the mirror. Like a stone thrown into water, ripples appeared, and a clear picture gradually appeared in the center of the mirror. The vast demon world was grotesque. In this world that had been sealed for countless years, various forces had been fighting and killing for countless years in order to compete for the limited cultivation resources. All forces used all kinds of extreme means. This was a world where the strong were respected. Killing was not a crime. Everyone was vicious and despicable. When being vicious and despicable became the law of survival for everyone, it was naturally normal in the eyes of the people in this world. Naturally, it had nothing to do with morality, so everything was done with a clear conscience, and as a matter of course. Only those who had the ability could survive, and only the strong could survive. A group of people lived in the naked law of the jungle without any disguise, so this world became incomparably bloody and cruel. This was a vast land that was dyed red with blood. Compared to the cruel laws of survival in the immortal world and the netherworld, this sky that was suffused with the smell of blood, and this land that was dyed red with blood was worthy of the name Demon World. Chapter 1131. The powerhouses that were able to stand tall in the sealed demon realm for countless years without falling were all renowned powerhouses throughout the ages. There were even some terrifying existences that had followed the demon god to conquer the three realms since the demon realm was established. Even though this place followed the law of the jungle, where the weak were prey to the strong and the strong were respected, but in this world, no matter how strong you were, whether you were an infamous giant or not, whether you were a terrifying existence left behind from a distant era, there was only one true master here. Everyone had to submit to him, or else they would die 10,000 times instead of being able to live. The first master of the demon realm was the demon god Night, who created the demon realm. This was an ancient legend. The second was the demon god's son, demon lord Yi. The third was Yi's son, demon lord Yi. The fourth was demon lord Yi's son, demon lord San Yi. Other than the first one who was addressed as the demon god, his descendants were all addressed as demon lord to show their respect to the demon god. There were 3 generations of demon lords in the demon world, and the current one was the demon god's great-grandson, demon lord Three Nights. The reason why the demon god's lineage was able to rule the demon realm until now, aside from the treasured techniques left behind by the demon god, it was also thanks to the demon god that the 72 great demon kings under him had their primordial spirits forcibly removed. Although the 72 great demon kings under the demon god had lost nearly half, the primordial spirits of the remaining 36 great demon kings were still in the hands of the demon god's descendant, demon lord Three Nights. Although these 36 great demon kings had powerful magic power and profound cultivation, demon lord Three Nights had their primordial spirits in his hands. If he wanted to kill them, it would be as easy as raising his hand. With these 36 great demon kings guarding the demon realm, they were the cornerstone of demon lord Three Nights, ruling over the demon realm. But to most of the heroes of the demon realm, the 36 great demon kings were unreachable figures. They rarely showed themselves unless something big happened, not to mention the supreme ruler of the demon realm, demon lord Three Nights. Everyone in the demon world knew that ever since the demon lord fell for the trap and was sealed away by the immortal and netherworld emperors, the Three Nights demon lord had lived in the demon palace and rarely came out. It was said that the Three Nights demon lord blamed himself for this. In reality, when the demon world was sealed, many people blamed demon lord Three Night for his incompetence, which led to the demon world falling into such a state. This kind of discussion became more and more intense. Not long after, an expert followed the will of the people and strongly demanded that the demon lord Three Nights hand over the primordial spirits of the 36 great demon kings and hand over the throne of the demon lord. In the end, this completely angered the demon king of Three Nights. With a single order, he carried out a bloodbath. He would rather kill the wrong person than let the wrong person go. Anyone who was even a little bit related to this matter, was all killed, completely uprooted. After the bloodbath, it was unknown how many people died. Everyone kept quiet out of fear. After all, their lives were more important. No one dared to mention this matter again, at least not openly. After this matter, the demon lord Three Nights once again lived in the demon palace. For many years, outsiders rarely saw him again. He had almost become a legend. However, just a few years ago, the demon palace that was shrouded in blood clouds suddenly moved again. One day, All 36 great demon kings guarding the demon world were summoned to the demon palace, causing the heroes of the demon world to try to figure out what was going on. Later the news spread. The demon palace had received news that someone had seen the demon blade that the demon lord had used in the past, and that the divine blade had recognized a new master. Demon Lord Three Knights was greatly shocked. He immediately used all his power to search and finally found that person. He brought him back to the demon palace. It was said that he had been appointed as the next demon lord's successor, but no one knew if this was true or not. Following that, the demon palace moved frequently. All the powers under its control continuously gathered all kinds of things and sent them to the demon palace. It was said that Demon Lord Three Knights had taken a liking to that successor, and all the things he gathered were for that successor's cultivation. On this day, under a continuous mountain range shrouded in red blood clouds, a group of men and women who had come from afar were being escorted to the mountain pass. Dozens of people flew out from the mountain pass to block them. The person in the lead stepped out and stared at the leader of the escort team. The latter quickly tossed a token to him and cupped his fists, saying, "By the decree of the Clear Sky Demon King, we offer 3,000 chaste men and 3,000 chaste women to the demon palace." The leader of the guards at the mountain pass checked the token and tossed it back to the other party. With a light wave of his hand, the row of people in front of the mountain pass immediately split into two sides. The 3,000 men and women who had their hands bound together by the tree vines were immediately ordered to slowly walk into the mountain pass. Occasionally, they would raise their heads to look into the depths of the blood clouds, their faces filled with unconcealable fear. Meanwhile, the guards at the two sides of the mountain pass inspected them one by one. Only those whose cultivation had been sealed could be allowed to enter. The wind in the mountains was cold and desolate, and the mountain path was rugged. Everywhere there were new or weathered white bones. Occasionally, there would be a clear kacha sound when someone stepped on these white bones. Everyone looked at these escorted men and women, as if they were looking at dead people, as if they would soon become the white bones they were currently stepping on. Meanwhile, the people who had been escorted here had ashen faces as soon as they stepped into the mountain pass, as if they knew that their deaths were not far away. At this moment, the three streaks of light that were streaking across the sky suddenly stopped, turned around, and landed on the hillside of the mountain pass. The three young men with extraordinary auras swept their cold eyes over the crowd below. Everyone looked up. When the guards at the mountain pass saw these three people, they were immediately shocked. Putting down what they were doing, they knelt down on one knee and said, "Greetings to the three young masters." Another quick-witted person shouted at the people who had been bound together, "Hurry up and kneel down to greet the three young masters." The guards who had escorted the people here immediately pointed at the prisoners and said sternly, "Hurry up and kneel down to greet the three young masters." "Greetings, young master." The disorderly crowd knelt down and shouted in a disorderly manner. The three people who had arrived were the three sons of the demon lord of Three Knights. The eldest was Yi Wanzong, the second was Yi Yuan, and the third was Yi Tuobian. The demon lord of Three Knights originally had 4 sons, and the youngest was called Yi Tiankong. Ever since he was young, he was quick-witted and studious, and the demon lord of Three Knights deeply doted on him. However, what made the demon lord of Three Knights sigh was that such a good seedling did not have the aptitude to cultivate. Later on, after Yi Tiankong grew up, he ran away from home alone. Until now, there had been no news of him, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. At this moment, the person standing on the mountain pass was the eldest son of the demon lord of Three Knights, Yi Wanzong. Looking at the crowd kneeling down below, Yi Wanzong frowned and said, "Go back to your work." Instantly, shouts rang out from below, and the 3,000 men and women immediately walked in one after another as they went through the inspection. On the mountain pass, Yi Yuan looked down at the crowd and suddenly snorted coldly. These people must have been recruited by father for that new brat. Father is too biased. We, his own children, can't even compare to an outsider. Yi Tuobian looked at his big brother, Yi Wanzong, and said, "The successor of the demon lord should have been big brother. But father actually stripped big brother of his right of inheritance and gave it to an outsider. What kind of logic is this? The two brothers spoke one after another, and Yi Wanzong's expression also became increasingly gloomy. In the crowd, a woman with disheveled hair suddenly thought of something when she heard that the three people who had arrived were actually the three young masters of the demon palace. She quickly combed her disheveled hair, revealing a charming and moving face, as she raised her head to welcome the three people on the mountain pass. However, the three young masters did not see her at all, and there were even signs of them leaving. Instantly, the woman became anxious. Suddenly, the sound of bones being stepped on caused her eyes to light up. Lowering her head, she saw a skull that had been kicked around. She hurriedly stepped on it, and her body immediately fell to the side. "Ayo!" A voice that sounded like a nightingale's cry rang out. It wasn't loud, but it was clear and moving. Instantly, someone in the crowd lost his footing and fell to the ground. However, because there were ropes made of tree vines between them, they did not completely fall to the ground. However, this caused the procession to pause for a moment. The person who was escorting them immediately lashed out with a whip and angrily shouted, "Get up!" After the sound of the whip, there was another cry of pain. It was obviously a cry of pain, but it was sharp and melodious like the chirping of an oriole, causing one's heartstrings to involuntarily tremble. On the mountain pass, the three young masters who were about to leave all turned around to look at the same time. They saw a woman holding the wound on her arm as she staggered to her feet. Inadvertently, she raised her head, revealing an enchanting face that could topple cities. There was a trace of pain on her jade-like face as she bit her red lips and continued to move forward. At this moment, the expressions of the three brothers immediately stiffened, and their hearts all palpitated. They did not expect that such a stunning beauty would be hidden among these people. Such a stunning beauty is actually a virgin. It's really rare. However, it's a pity that she will only become nourishment for his demonic arts if she falls into the hands of that brat. What a waste! The third brother Yi Tuobian could not help but let out a long sigh. The second brother also sighed and shook his head, feeling that it was a great pity. The eldest brother Yi Wanzong's face turned gloomy. Suddenly, he shouted to the people below, "Wait!" The people below paused and everyone looked over. They saw Yi Wanzong waving his hand and pointing at the beautiful woman who was being whipped. He said indifferently, "The others can go, but I want her to stay." The leader of the escort team looked towards the mountain pass with some difficulty and said, "Young master, please forgive me. It's hard to find virgins in the devil realm. The great devil king spent a lot of effort to find them. Before I came here, I received a decree that all 3,000 men and women must be sent here. If even one of them is missing, I will be punished." Yi Wanzong's expression changed, and he snorted coldly. "Aren't you afraid that I will punish you now?" Seeing that the other party was at a loss and in fear, Yi Wanzong's tone changed, and he said, "I will explain to the great devil king. You can push the blame to me, and it will not involve you. Leave this person for me." Then again, if this little pawn insisted on not giving him the woman, even though he was the dignified young master of the devil palace, there was nothing he could do. He did not dare to rob the great devil king of the azure sky's belongings. If he did, the nature of the act would change. It should be known that the great devil king of the azure sky was a character who followed his ancestor, the devil god. He was one of the most senior figures in the entire devil realm. Even his father, the devil king 3 Knights, would not treat him lightly, let alone him. Naturally, he had to be tactful and ask for the woman. Chapter 1132. Since the dignified young master of the devil palace had spoken to this extent, the leader naturally wouldn't say anything else. Otherwise he would really be insensible. Even if Yi Wanzong let him go now, the great devil king Qing Tian wouldn't let him go after this. It was very possible that he might even be killed to save the face of the young master of the devil palace. Hence, the leader quickly went to the crowd and untied the whipped woman, removing her from the crowd. Yi Wanzong, who was on the hillside, raised his hand and grabbed the woman, directly pulling her to the hillside. He held her soft waist with one hand and gently parted the messy hair that covered her face with the other. Her enchanting face that could topple cities caused the expressions of the few brothers to freeze again. The woman, on the other hand, was struggling, seemingly timid, afraid, and shy. Yi Wanzong smiled faintly and said, "Let's go back." "Go back?" Yi Tuobian was stunned and said, "Aren't we going to play?" At this moment, the group of thousands of men and women who were escorted here immediately knelt down and begged one after another, "Young master, save us." Following that, everyone else also knelt down and begged for mercy. The scene was a mess. When everyone saw the person who could save their lives, they immediately had the will to live. Yi Wanzong wouldn't save them, and it was impossible for him to save them. He glanced down and said indifferently, "I'm not going back." Then, he picked up the beautiful woman and rushed back to the depths of the mountain range that was shrouded in blood-colored mist. The remaining two brothers looked at each other and smiled in tacit understanding. Then they returned to the group as well. Immediately, the sound of whips and whips resounded in the mountain pass. A large group of people were once again chased into the mountain pass. After the inspection was completed, a few large flying devices were brought out from the mountain pass, and everyone was chased onto them. They were quickly transported to the depths of the mountain range. Not long after, a towering mountain that stood out from the flock of chickens appeared in front of the trembling crowd. The mountain was ferocious, and it was pressing down on them. This wasn't their destination. The flying device that carried them went around the mountain and continued to go deeper. However, it didn't prevent them from looking up at the magnificent palace on the peak of the mountain. The magnificent palace that was covered in blood-red clouds was the legendary palace where the Devil King of 3 Nights resided. On the peak of the mountain, a man dressed in a white robe and a white hat appeared unusually neat and tidy. His face was also fair and clean, and he was skinny and stiff. He silently stood on a black Chilean beast that was carved on the cliff, looking at the few large flying devices that flew past the mountain. In fact, there were many carvings of all kinds of ferocious beasts around the plaza on the summit. They were facing in all directions. The images were lifelike, mighty, and frightening. At this moment, the white-robed man standing on top of the Chilean beast, and he looked at him and said in a sharp voice, "What?" The white-robed man standing on top of the Chilean beast slowly turned around and asked him with a sharp voice. The guard leader immediately told him about how Yi Wanzong had taken away a woman who was consecrated by the Devil King of Qingtian. After listening to the story, the white-robed man expressionlessly waved his hand, indicating that he understood. After the guard leader left, he turned around and looked at the dark and oppressive magnificent palace under the blood-red clouds. He took a step forward, and a few illusions of his footsteps immediately appeared on the black jade-like square. He walked 1,000 meters away in a few moments, and appeared at the open door of the palace. He slowly walked in. The palace was frighteningly quiet. The surrounding walls were filled with carvings of all kinds of ferocious beasts. The most eye-catching one was the wide scarlet blood jade throne that was placed on the high platform. It was a complete whole, and there were no marks on it. It was obviously carved from a single piece of blood jade. Sitting on it was a well-built man who was not small. He was clad in black armor and had a scarlet cloak on his shoulders. His hair was tied up, and he wore a crown. His eyebrows were thick and black like a horned dragon. His nose was like a hanging gall, and his lips were thick. He was resting one arm on the armrest of the blood jade throne, and he was holding his forehead with his fist. His eyes were closed, and one of his feet was curled up under his thigh, and the other was placed on the throne. His other hand was placed on his knee, and half of his body was covered by a scarlet cloak. He was sitting there quietly, and no one knew if he was asleep or not. Even so, he was like a sleeping tiger, and he was not angry, but he was like a fierce tiger. All the air in the hall seemed to be under his control by inhaling and exhaling. The white-robed eunuch walked over lightly, walked up the stairs, and walked to the side where he was lying. He bent his head and whispered in that person's ear about how Yi Wanzong took away the woman that the demon king Qingtian had consecrated. After listening, that person only let out a soft hum to indicate that he understood. Eunuch was about to leave, But he suddenly realized that the person's eyes had opened a little, and there was a flash of light in his eyes. He then bowed slightly and waited for instructions. Such a coincidence. That person's eyes flickered, and his thick lips moved slightly. He said in a deep voice, "Investigate that woman's background clearly. If she is not clean, then do as you see fit. If it is purely a coincidence, then forget it. Wanzong probably has a grudge against me." Eunuch Li, who was about to obey the order, was stunned when he heard the last sentence. He then said in a sharp voice, "One day, young lord will understand the Demon King's painstaking efforts." Seeing that the person's eyes slowly closed again, he did not say anything more, and quickly walked down the stairs and out of the palace. Not long after Eunuch Li left the palace, that person's ears suddenly twitched, and his eyes suddenly opened. He heard a hazy voice shouting in his ears, "Sanyi! Sanyi!" He immediately shouted in a deep voice, "Who is it?" As soon as he said this, the hazy voice in the void seemed to have found its target. A ball of gentle white light gradually appeared in the void in front of him, and after it seemed to have solidified, it quickly spread out like a ripple. It was like an unfolding picture scroll, and a clear scene appeared in the palace. In the picture scroll, there was a white-clothed, barefooted, and elegant man looking at him. There was also a dignified man dressed in golden robes staring at him without a smile, and his eyes seemed to be filled with vigilance. On the side, there were two people with shocked expressions, and they were also looking at him dumbfoundedly. Their background seemed to be in a mountain valley. On the other side of the picture, when Yu Qianqiu and the others saw the dignified man appear in the picture, they immediately held their breaths and stared with wide eyes. The other person's attire, as well as the unmoving aura of a mountain lying on his side, seemed to pass through the obsidian light mirror and hit them in the face, extremely dignified. Especially the moment his eyes opened, it was even more breathtaking, causing people's minds to tremble. Just based on this unparalleled aura of being above others, decisive in killing and supremacy, Yu Qianqiu and the Great Bright Will looked at each other in dismay. There was no need to guess. The dignified man in the obsidian light mirror was definitely the legendary Demon King Three Knights. In the mirror, the Demon King Three Knights' expression also froze, as if he had seen something inconceivable. He suddenly stood up with a whoosh, and the scarlet cloak wrapped around his body fluttered behind him. He opened his eyes wide and said, "Bai Qi, Jin Tai, it's the two of you." Bai Qi and Jin Tai looked at each other and cupped their hands, saying, "How have you been, Demon King?" At the side, Yu Qianqiu hurriedly cupped his hands as well. He felt that it was inappropriate to just stand there in front of such a person. The Great Bright Will glanced at him, as if asking why he was joining in the fun. This Demon King Three Knights stretched out a finger, his eyes filled with bewilderment as he said, "What's going on?" Bai Qi smiled faintly, saying, "Demon King might not know, but the obsidian light mirror in my hand has the ability to peer into yin and yang, and can contact anyone in the three realms at any time. Jin Tai and I haven't seen Demon King for a long time, so we came together to pay our respects. I hope we didn't disturb Demon King." Obsidian light mirror. Demon King Three Knights frowned as he muttered to himself. The surprise on his face gradually disappeared, and he regained his calm. He looked at them and sneered, saying, "You two shameless and despicable fellows, since you want to pay your respects to this monarch, why don't you show your sincerity and open the seal of the demon realm? Come to the demon palace, and pay your respects to this monarch." Yu Qianqiu sneaked a glance at the usually fickle and ruthless Jin Tai, and found that he was standing obediently at the side, not making a sound. His expression was slightly nervous, like a mouse seeing a cat. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but sigh. It seemed that this Demon King Three Knights truly lived up to his reputation. To be able to scare Jin Tai like this, there really was always one thing to conquer another. Before Demon King's anger subsides, Jin Tai and I don't dare to provoke Demon King, so we can only pay our respects from 2 realms away. Bai Qi said sincerely, "When Demon King's anger subsides, the 2 of us will personally go to the Demon Palace to apologize to Demon King." "Good. You really are out of control, daring to flirt with this monarch." Hearing this, Demon King Three Knights flew into a rage. He didn't believe that Bai Qi and Jin Tai would personally come to the Demon Palace to apologize. If this wasn't flirting, then what was? However, he couldn't do anything to these two, so he pointed at them and angrily shouted, "Two arrogant villains. You are only two dogs that this monarch supported to watch over the immortal world and underworld. If it wasn't for this monarch, how could the two of you sit on the thrones of the immortal emperor and underworld emperor? Two ingrates, I raised you up, but now you're biting back at your master. Just you wait. When the day I leave, I'll make your lives worse than death, and you'll be tortured for all eternity." Yu Qianqiu and De Mingluan were secretly shocked. Many people in the immortal and underworld thought of Bai Qi and Jin Tai as heroes who fought against the demonic Tao. But hearing Demon King Three Knights' words, Bai Qi and Jin Tai were actually supported by Demon King Three Knights. No wonder when the previous immortal emperor and underworld emperor died in battle. These two appeared out of nowhere and swept through the immortal and underworld realms, leading everyone to defeat the demonic Tao several times. In the end, they naturally ascended to the immortal emperor and underworld emperor's thrones. So there was a huge secret behind this, and Demon King Three Knights purposely supported them. Damn it! Knowing such a big secret, these two wouldn't kill them to silence them, right? Yu Qianqiu looked at Bai Qi and Jin Tai warily, already prepared to leave at any time. De Mingluan also looked at the two nervously. Bai Qi and Jin Tai's expressions changed greatly. They didn't think that Demon King Three Knights would misunderstand Bai Qi's words, thinking that he was teasing him, and actually revealed the secret. As a result, the two of them really regretted bringing these two people with them. Chapter 1133. However, what was done could not be undone. There was no way to take back his words. Bai Qi gritted his teeth and said, "Demon Monarch, you misunderstand. We didn't want to do that back then, but we were forced to do it." Yu Qianqiu, De Mingluan, and Jin Tai all held their breaths in concentration. They had already vaguely guessed who he was going to implicate. Force. Demon King Three Knights laughed maniacally, pointing at the two and shouting, "Speak. I'd like to see who's scheming against me." From his tone, it was clear that he didn't believe Bai Qi's words. He was waiting for Bai Qi to say who it was to expose his lies, and then humiliate him. This was the only way. The two were communicating across two realms, so there was no other way but to humiliate each other. Demon Monarch, you might not know, but in the ancient forest of the immortal realm, there is a wood spirit with profound cultivation. Before Bai Qi finished speaking, Demon Monarch Three Knights' expression changed as if he had thought of something. His sharp gaze interrupted. "Mu Yuanzi of the Wood Killer Sea. Are you talking about him?" Bai Qi stilled. Even Jin Tai didn't know Old Man Mu's name and residence. He didn't think that Demon Monarch Three Knights would be able to identify the other's origins. Bai Qi couldn't help but mess up his plans. He was afraid that the two had a close relationship and wouldn't be able to fool him. But when he thought about it, he decided that he might as well be ruthless. Only when the three realms became more chaotic would Demon Monarch Three Knights have more use for them. Otherwise, Demon Monarch Three Knights would be able to do something like cooking all the hares. He said decisively, "Demon Monarch, please understand. It is that Mu Yuanzi of the Wood Killer Sea who is forcing us. His cultivation is profound, and we have no power to resist. But what Demon Monarch doesn't know is that Mu Yuanzi of the Wood Killer Sea isn't the only one involved. There are also a bunch of old fellows from the Netherworld Spirit Office fanning the flames. Otherwise, Demon Monarch, with just the two of us, how would we dare to become enemies with the entire Devil Path?" Jin Tai exclaimed in his heart. Wonderful. The Netherworld Immortal Mansion, Old Man Mu, and the Devil Path. If these three parties were to fight against each other, there would be a greater chance of fishing in troubled waters. Yu Qianqiu's heart skipped a beat. He thought to himself that they were indeed ruthless. It was clear that they were either succeeding or dying for a righteous cause. Even if they didn't have a good ending, they would drag the whole world down with them. But what puzzled Yu Qianqiu was the Demon King Three Knights so gullible. Once Demon Lord Three Knights came out, he would be able to tell the truth with a single check. How could he be fooled? What he didn't know was that those who could reach the pinnacle had all gambled. There weren't many good things waiting for you to do in the world. Bai Qi and Jin Tai had gambled to success in the past, and Yu Qianqiu himself had gambled countless times. A commoner gambled a little, while a big shot gambled a lot. It was difficult for a person who was afraid of everything to achieve great things. The most important thing was that the Netherworld Immortal Mansion, Old Man Mu, and the Demon King 3 Knights were not people who would tolerate the other party's condemnation. If they did not agree with each other, they would fight to the death. There was basically no possibility of a good talk until the winner was decided. In addition, there was no way out, so Bai Qi had every reason to take a gamble. And the Netherworld Immortal Mansion, Demon Lord 3 Knights' eyebrows twitched like a horned dragon. No one knew what he was thinking, but he looked over and sneered. He flicked his scarlet cloak and sat down on the blood jade throne. He stared at the two of them and said with a faint smile, "You two are very honest. You've said everything that should and shouldn't be said. I'm afraid it's not that simple to see me today. If you have something to say it quickly. Don't beat around the bush with me. Demon Lord, please understand." Bai Qi cupped his hands and said sincerely, "Regarding what we did in the past, the two of us have been unable to eat or sleep in peace. After thinking about it again and again, we finally made a difficult decision. We're going to open the seal of the Devil World and let the Demon Lord rule the world again." As soon as these words came out, Demon Lord 3 Knights, who had just regained his composure, stood up again with a frightening aura. The thick black aura around his body was like a black dragon. Even though his mind was as steady as steel, he couldn't help but be moved when he heard these words. His eyes flickered. He knew that after so many years, Jin Tai and Bai Qi had suddenly come to visit him. This matter was probably not a joke. Bai Qi and Jin Tai exchanged glances. Seeing that Demon Lord 3 Knights had lost his composure, it meant that there was hope. However, Demon Lord 3 Knights was not someone to be trifled with. He calmed down in an instant and slowly sat down with his scarlet cloak on his back. He said sarcastically, "There's such a good thing? Unless the two of you are tired of living, that's more like it. Speak. Just what happened outside to force the two of you to this state?" Bai Qi was about to reply when he saw Demon Lord 3 Knights point at Jin Tai with an imposing aura. "Of the 5 great spirits of heaven and earth, my devil world has the 2 spirits of metal and earth. Jin Tai, you were originally a member of my devil world. Back then, you said that you would serve me, so I gave you a chance. How come you've become mute after seeing this lord?" Bai Qi, shut up and speak. He was a member of the devil world. Yu Qianqiu and De Mingluan looked at Jin Tai in shock. No wonder this fellow was so inhumane. He was from the devil Dao. Jin Tai adjusted his expression and solemnly cupped his hands. "Demon Lord's eyes are like a torch. Nothing can be hidden from you. Back then, we were forced by Mu Yuanzi and the Netherworld Immortal Estate to do something we shouldn't have done. We've been under their control like puppets. All these years, we've been serving them with fear and trepidation. Who knew that they'd somehow found out that we might be your subordinates? Thus, they set up a new representative in the Immortal and Netherworld realms and tried to kill us. Now that the Immortal Palace and Netherworld Imperial Palace have been taken over, the two of us have been forced into a corner. Thus, we've come to beg Demon Lord to give us justice." As expected, none of them were easy to deal with. When Yu Qianqiu heard this, he sighed inwardly. His ability to lie was not any worse than his own. In the blink of an eye, he'd called him subordinate. His skin was really thick. If these two could make it in the future, they'd have to learn from his stepmother. "Oh," Demon Lord 3 Knights gave a lukewarm "oh," and lightly asked, "Then why don't you tell me how they forced the two of you?" His tone was full of meaning, but it was hard to tell whether he believed or not. Jin Tai immediately revealed an expression, as if he'd been greatly wronged. He said indignantly, "They actually supported 2 of their enemies to become the representatives of the Immortal and Netherworld realms. The 2 of us couldn't accept this, and went to the ancient forest to find Mu Yuanzi. Who knew that Mu Yuanzi would personally attack the 2 of us for the sake of the Immortal Realm representative." As he spoke, he pulled Bai Qi over and tore off his clothes. revealing a large wound on his chest that hadn't healed yet. There was still a faint green aura on the wound. Jin Tai pointed at the wound and said indignantly, "This is the wound from Mu Yuanzi's wooden staff. Bai Qi almost lost his life because of it. The two of us were lucky enough to escape with our lives. From the looks of it, this wound is indeed caused by a wood-type treasure." Demon Lord Three Knights stared at the green scar for a while, then said, "But according to what I know, Mu Yuanzi has always stood aloof from worldly affairs and would massacre see. And he doesn't easily kill. For the two of you to provoke him, it's clear that you have indeed angered him." It was hard to tell whether this was a suspicion or a confirmation. It was hard to be sure. He then added, "The old fellows in the Netherworld Palace have already lost their temper after being beaten by Lord Wan, Demon God. As long as the heroes of the demonic path still exist, they won't easily get involved in the disputes of the three realms. Why do you want me to believe that they've become disloyal again?" When Yu Qianqiu heard the word Wan, he felt disdain in his heart. He knew the inside story. Back then, the ones who attacked the Netherworld Palace were the ancestors of all demons, Tai Shu Zheng and Ming. But Demon Lord Three Knights put the credit on his own ancestor. As expected, no one could say who was shameless. Everyone was the same. Jin Tai cupped his hands in grief and indignation. "Demon Lord, you might not know, but back then, the coiling dragon god who created the Netherworld Palace had killed a wind god. After coiling dragon god's spirit wandered, he left behind the wind god staff in the Netherworld Palace. It's a divine weapon with unparalleled power. The old fellows in the Netherworld Palace actually gave this divine weapon to the representative they supported in the Netherworld. When Demon Lord Three Realms arrives, he will know if it's real or fake. This is the best proof. The wind god staff." Demon Lord Three Knights was shocked. He seemed to have heard of this treasure and knew how powerful it was. After frowning and thinking for a long time, he suddenly looked at the two and said arrogantly, "I understand your intentions. Since the two of you are sincere in submitting to me, then I won't pursue the past. The two of you, quickly go open the 74 demon paths of the immortal realm, Netherworld realm, and human realm. When the heroes of the demon realm return to the three realms, I will definitely avenge you." Before they even begged, the other party made a promise so easily. No matter how they listened, it made them feel uneasy. When Yu Qianqiu heard this, he was instantly happy. He looked at the two acting. As expected, Jin Tai and Bai Qi's expressions became a little uncomfortable. They stuttered and didn't reply for a long time. "What?" Demon Lord Three Knights' tiger eyes suddenly widened. He snorted coldly. "Could it be that you still want to discuss some conditions with me?" With one sentence he shut their mouths. However, when he came out, the two of them wouldn't dare to mention it even if they had 100 guts. The two of them didn't doubt that the moment Demon Lord Three Knights stepped out of the demon realm, they would be the first to be slaughtered. They probably wouldn't be able to see the matter of revenge. Jin Tai looked at Bai Qi. Bai Qi used the opportunity to straighten his clothes to organize his thoughts. Then he bowed and said, "Demon Lord is wise. Back then, the two of us did something we shouldn't have done. We have always been fearful of Demon Lord's might, and lived in constant fear. Now that we have no other choice, in order to save our lives, we are trembling with fear and seek an audience with Demon Lord. It's not that the two of us are greedy, but that the two of us really want to continue managing the immortal realm and Netherworld realm for Demon Lord. We want to complete Demon Lord's unfinished business in order to redeem ourselves. Please, Demon Lord, give the two of us another chance." Chapter 1134. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees the game more clearly than the person involved. What does it mean to be able to summon clouds with one turn of the hand and rain with another? Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but admire this Demon King Three Knights. As expected, he lived up to his reputation. Even though he was sealed in the demon world, he was still able to tame Jin Tai and Bai Qi. These two fellows, who originally wanted to bargain, could no longer see the confidence they had in their hands. The faint scholarly smile on Bai Qi's face disappeared. No matter how luxurious Jin Tai's clothes were, it was all fake. He was clearly the one who had the upper hand, but with just a few words, he was forced to bow his head and beg. I understand what the two of you mean. You're afraid that I'll burn the bridge after crossing it. So you want this Lord's promise, right? Demon Lord Three Knights calmly looked at the two and said lightly, Fine. I promise you. After this, I will let the two of you continue to manage the immortal and netherworld for me. And I will not make things difficult for you again. Bai Qi and Jin Tai looked at each other in dismay. If this kind of promise could go in one ear and out the other, the two of them would have died countless times already. How could they still be alive now? Seeing that the two were still hesitating, Demon Lord Three Knights, who clearly knew what was going on, pressed on. Could it be that you don't believe this Lord's promise? At this point, Bai Qi gritted his teeth and cupped his fists. Demon Lord, please understand. This subordinate naturally believes in the Demon Lord's promise, but there are surely many people in the demon world who want to kill us. In order to preserve our lives, we must be cautious. The two of us wish to ask the demon monarch for a life-saving talisman. If the demon monarch swears in the name of the demon god to ensure our safety, I believe that none of the heroes of the demon world would dare to violate the demon monarch's oath. The two of us can also be at ease and wholeheartedly serve the demon monarch. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. What were you doing earlier? They were here to haggle, and everyone knew that the other party was not a kind person. They should have laid the matter out long ago. Why did they have to humiliate themselves? Impudent! Demon King Three Knights roared angrily. How dare you? Do you think the two of you are worthy of making me swear in the name of Lord Devil God? Who was it that made the Demon King so angry? I wonder if they can share the Demon King's burden. Another person's voice suddenly came from the obsidian light mirror, causing everyone present to be taken aback. Yu Qianqiu's brows moved slightly, feeling that this voice was familiar. Demon Lord Three Knights looked at the entrance of the palace, and saw a handsome young man dressed in black robes, bowing at the entrance. The anger on his face eased as he asked, Why are you here? The elegant young man replied respectfully, The Devil Monarch has sent me a large number of people for my cultivation. Naturally, I have to thank him. Demon Lord Three Knights waved his hand and said, This is what I should do. No need to be so polite. He then pointed at the empty space in front of him and said, You came at the right time. Someone actually dared to make me swear in the name of Lord Devil God to protect them. Come up and take a look at them. Remember them for me. If there is a chance in the future, don't let a single one of them go. The elegant young man looked around the palace, but did not see anyone or anything out of the ordinary. Remembering that Demon Lord Three Knights had asked him to go up and take a look, he walked up to the blood jade throne with a puzzled expression. As he walked, he said with a faint smile, Then I want to see who is courting death, actually daring to have designs on Lord Devil God. He maintained a respectful attitude as he slowly ascended the platform. After bowing to Demon Lord Three Knights who was sitting on the blood jade throne, he slowly turned around and was stunned. He did not see anything at the entrance of the palace. So when he turned around after ascending the platform, he saw a realistic image in the air. There were 4 people looking at him in bewilderment. Yu Qianqiu was wondering whose voice was so familiar. When he saw someone ascend the high platform and turn around, his mind buzzed when he saw the other person's appearance. He cried out in shock, Yan Juexing, Bai Qi, Jin Tai, and De Mingluan all turned around to look at him in confusion. When the elegant young man in the image saw Yu Qianqiu's appearance, he was also stunned. He had been wondering if he had seen the wrong person. But when he heard the other party clearly call out his name, he cried out almost at the same time, Niu Yud. Bai Qi and De Mingluan both knew that Niu Yud was Yu Qianqiu, but Jin Tai had always thought that Yu Qianqiu was Niu Yud. However, this did not affect the three's judgment. The elegant young man beside Demon Lord Three Knights recognized Niu Yud, and Niu Yud also recognized that elegant young man. However, what made the three of them confused was how Niu Yud knew someone who was sealed in the demon realm. Furthermore, it was obvious that he knew someone who was close to the Demon Lord Three Knights. This was simply too inconceivable. How could someone who was separated by 2 realms know each other? Let alone them. Even Demon Lord Three Knights was stunned. He pointed at Yu Qianqiu and asked Yan Juexing, You know him? Niu Yid. Of course I know him. Even if he turned to dust, I would still recognize him. The elegant young man stared at Yu Qianqiu with a twisted expression and sneered. To be more precise, he is the Yu Qianqiu that I told Demon Lord about. He is that despicable, shameless, lowly, and unscrupulous Yu Qianqiu that forced me to my death. He is that Yu Qianqiu that plays tricks and doesn't dare to show his face. How could I not know him? I know him too well. Back then, Yan Juexing was forced into the demon realm by Yu Qianqiu in the Thousand Li Lake under Demon Realm's Obedient Island. When he first arrived in the demon realm, he had indeed suffered a lot. Not to mention the fact that he was unfamiliar with the place. Perhaps because of his character, he couldn't meet a good person, so he could only fight with his life on the line. Those who hadn't seen it would never be able to imagine how miserable he was. When he was in desperate straits, he had mentioned to his opponents that he was the successor of the demon realm's demon lord. However, they could tell that he was an idiot who knew nothing about the demon realm. He didn't even know where the demon palace was. Yet he dared to lie. Only a ghost would believe that he was from the demon palace. Naturally, they would kill him and steal his treasures. However, Yan Juexing relied on the demon blade's divine ability to protect his master. It could be said that he had escaped from death every time. However, every time he suffered, he would curse Yu Qianqiu in his heart. If Yu Qianqiu knew about this, he would definitely understand why he was always met with misfortune in the celestial realm. Fortunately, when Yan Juexing was besieged by a large group of people, he met someone who knew his stuff. He could tell that the cultivation technique he used was the orthodox Great Fiend Celestial technique of the Devil Palace's Fiend Celestial lineage. After the news was reported, it alarmed a demon king, who had followed the demon god to conquer the three realms. When she arrived, she immediately saw that the treasure in Yan Juexing's hands was the demon god's divine weapon and demon blade. She was immediately shocked. Others didn't know about the demon blade, but as the demon god's close subject she knew. Even the current demon king three knights couldn't easily control the demon blade. This was because the demon blade had a demon spirit. Unless one was recognized by the demon god, it was impossible for the demon blade to recognize him as its master. In addition, although the demon god technique wasn't very good, it was very authentic. What's more, the demon king actually detected a terrifying aura that belonged to the demon god personally from Yan Juexing's body. She had followed the demon god for so many years, it was hard for her to mistake the demon god's aura. All of this was too shocking for her. In other words, this unlucky young man was actually someone who had the attention of the demon god in the god realm. To be more precise, this person should be the demon god's inheritor. Facing the demon blade, the demon king didn't have any thoughts of stealing the divine weapon and killing him. This was because she understood what it meant to have the demon blade in this young man's hands. She also understood how terrifying the demon god was. The demon god actually chose this person from the god realm and personally protected him. This meant that although the demon god was in the god realm, he could attack anyone who harmed his inheritor in the lower realm at any time. With the demon king's help, naturally, all the problems were no longer problems. The suffering that Yan Juexing had suffered in the demon world naturally became a thing of the past. In an instant, the bitterness was over and the sweetness was coming. After some preferential treatment and comfort, the demon king quickly sent him to the demon palace's demon king three knights. The demon king three knights was also shocked. He couldn't help but ask about Yan Juexing's background. After a series of questions, he found out that Yan Juexing was a weirdo created by a demon book that he had given out at a critical moment. What was rare and commendable was that Yan Juexing was able to endure the cruel torture of the 7-star acupuncture technique, which was something that only 1 in a million people could endure. His talent in cultivating the demon god technique was obvious. It was no wonder that the ancestors of the god realm favored him and bestowed him with a divine weapon or demon blade. Yan Juexing found out that this demon king three knights was the expert from the demon world who had sent the demon book to the human world. Furthermore, he was the paragon that led the demon world. He was overjoyed and wanted to recognize this person as his master. If it was any other time, the Demon King 3 Knights would have accepted it. However, Yan Juexing had already inherited the demon god's legacy. How would he dare to accept this disciple? The ancestors of the demon god were watching from the unseen world. Furthermore, the demon god's seniority was even higher than his, so he explained the reason to Yan Juexing. Yan Juexing didn't even dream that he would become the direct disciple of the famous demon god that he had never seen before in the blink of an eye. He really wondered if he was dreaming. What was even more unexpected was that the 3 Knights Demon Lord gathered the 36 great demon kings under him and held a closed-door meeting to discuss the matter of abdicating his position to Yan Juexing. The old men who had followed the demon god all those years ago also unanimously agreed. Yan Juexing was obviously happy to have such a good thing happen, but he wasn't an idiot. He didn't let his happiness get to his head. He naturally understood that it was a joke for an outsider with no foundation and shallow cultivation to suddenly jump out and want to lead the demon world. They were only doing it because of the demon god that he didn't know existed. To be honest, he had never seen the demon god before, so he didn't have any confidence. Furthermore, the hardships he had experienced in the demon world made him deeply understand the cruelty of the demon world. How could it be safer than leaning on a tree that could shelter him from the wind and rain? Thus, he tried his best to refuse and supported the Demon King 3 Knights with abnormal firmness. If he didn't accept, everyone had no choice. In the end, the Demon King 3 Knights suggested that Yan Juexing be the next Demon King's successor. Furthermore, if Yan Juexing wanted to, he could ascend to the throne and lead the demon world at any time. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.